Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Friday. The weekend is almost here, and to get us there, Brian, we have a Friday free-for-all mailbag going on today. We already have 37 awesome questions starred. And look, man, we've covered a lot of awesome topics so far.
Well, we have 37 questions starred, but half of them are salty, so I can't guarantee they're all awesome. I'm just saying.
Okay. We have like 26 awesome questions already starred.
And then 12 more from Salty. So we're all good, Salty. Just giving you a hard time today, buddy.
Oh, man, that's funny. Well, folks, if this does happen to be your first mailbag, you can always put MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji before your submission. That lets us know to set that question aside, because if this is also your first time, you also know that our chat likes to get after it a little bit and likes to participate or sometimes not participate in the show topic. But I think today they're going to be pretty dialed in.
Yes.
So we don't want to get your question lost in the shuffle. So MB for mailbag or mailbox emoji before your question. And as always, super chats get bumped up to the top. But today, folks, we are just giving back and answering the questions that you guys have and have accumulated throughout the week. I'm ready to dive into this thing, man.
The reason that I'm giving Salty a hard time is because Trev and I were actually just talking about his questions, and we were like, he's actually got some really good questions in there today. So Salty, you actually got to start it off right. And I think a good way to start, Trev, we talk about anything Notre Dame related, Notre Dame team, Notre Dame recruiting. And after the news yesterday about Hannah Hidalgo coming back, and just to be clear, obviously that's big news. She was not able to go to the WNBA. That was never an option. She's not old enough, and since she's not graduated, she can't go. But as we saw last year, doesn't mean that your top player can't, at least your point guard can't jump in the portal and transfer somewhere else like we saw with Olivia Miles. So that's huge news. If you want to ask about, women's basketball, I did a little story yesterday, obviously with Hannah coming back. You got KK Bransford coming back. Leah Macy will be back from knee injury. She was a McDonald's All-American and a stud 5-girl class coming in next year. Portal's going to be interesting, Trev. Candace Parker had some big comments to the top post. I was going to say big, but I don't think that's allowed when we talk about women's sports, right? The top post player in the portal, she said to her, you should go play at Notre Dame. So it's going to be an interesting month here, Trev, on the transfer portal with women's basketball. So if you want to talk about that, now's a good time to talk about basketball as well. Anything college football related also. And that's where Salty came in, Trev, because he got us kicked off with a couple really good college football topics. So let's get started here with numero uno.
Which team is more likely to return to the college football playoff, Miami or Texas Tech? Difficult to pick one since both teams have incredibly easy schedules.
I think I would go Miami, Trev. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this because Miami clearly has the toughest opponent of the two teams. I would argue that Miami's path to the ACC championship, just looking at the quality of the teams on their schedule, is easier than Texas Tech's. A loss to Notre Dame does not at all keep them from their plans, whereas Texas Tech's toughest opponents are teams that are in their league. Now, you could argue that Texas Tech has shown an ability to win the games they're supposed to win better than Miami has, whose 4 regular season wins. Honestly, Trev, I don't know that they should have lost any of them, to be honest with you. Maybe at SMU might be the only legit loss that they had. They should have beat Louisville at home. They should have beat Georgia Tech on the road. They should have beat Syracuse. They were up on Syracuse 21-0 2 years ago. So I think Miami's path in their conference is easier. And the reality is if Notre Dame beats Miami 100-0, it has no bearing on their playoff bid if they win their league, if they run the table in their league, win their league. So that's how I view it. But, as Tom Redinger said, Trev, you and I both agree on this. I think they both make it. But if you're asking me who has the easier path, I think Texas Tech has the tougher in-conference schedule between the two. And that's the one that puts some odds to your, some tougher odds to your playoff berth. If your in-conference schedule is easy, but your out-of-conference schedule is hard, then it doesn't matter. Still win your league, and it doesn't matter. As Duke showed last year, Trev, you could lose 3 games out of conference to G5 teams. I mean, they lost to Duke. They lost to Illinois, the Power 4 team. Then they lost to UConn and Tulane, still won their league, and they didn't make the playoffs last year. But under the current rules, Duke would be in the playoffs because, as we've mentioned before on the show, Notre Dame's not the only – Notre Dame being in, if they're in the top 12, is not the only new rule under the current agreement. It is also that if you win your Power 4 conference, you get an automatic bid no matter where you're ranked. And so Duke would make it this year if the same circumstance happened. So that's why I give Miami the edge. But I think both of them make it back to the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think both do, but between the two, I'm also going to go with Miami for a couple of different reasons. One, when I look at Miami's schedule, I agree that it is easy, but even outside of the Notre Dame game, Miami has the opportunity to make a strong impression on the committee depending on who they beat, where they beat them, and how they beat them. And we gave them a hard time last year about how they didn't leave the state of Florida until the first week in November, and that's going to take until week 1 of this year where they play Stanford on the road Friday night. Now, odds are they're going to beat Stanford. I'm sure the line is already out for that game, and I'm sure it strongly favors Miami. But even in between that, you're on the road against Clemson, a team that Brian and I both believe is going to be massively improved this year. You get Florida State at home. Who knows what that's going to look like. You get Notre Dame on the road. You get Virginia Tech at home. So you have options to bolster your resume for the playoffs. Whereas with Texas Tech, it's like because of the state of the Big 12, I think by and large, their conference schedule is a little bit more difficult than Miami's because they don't have as much variance. Miami, it's like you get Clemson on the road or you get, Stanford on the road. Whereas Texas Tech, it's all kind of, you get a lot of the middle tier teams in the Big 12, which is a very competitive league, relatively speaking, but when I look at their schedule overall, it's kind of like, okay, what's going to be that one win that they get that the committee will go back and look at when they evaluate the season as a whole and be like, yo, that's a playoff caliber team, especially because their exit last year was a 23-0 blowout to Oregon. So I think it'll be Miami. I do think Texas Tech is going to play for their conference championship again, but it helps out when you don't have Kansas or Kansas State or BYU on your schedule. So, it's interesting with Texas Tech. But if I had to pick between one or the other, I'd go Miami.
Trev, you talk about FanDuel, obviously. The conference championship odds came out today, and Miami's a -135. Texas Tech's a -125. It's interesting that the next best odds in both leagues are +700. SMU is at +700 in the ACC, and then BYU is at +700 in the Big 12. Notre Dame plays 3 of those 4 teams. They play Miami, SMU, BYU. The only team they don't play is Texas Tech, which they wouldn't play Texas Tech because Texas Tech doesn't play real teams out of conference. So, that I thought that was interesting. So clearly FanDuel agrees with our statement that we just made, Trev, which is I think they both make it.
Yeah.
They're clearly the 2 best teams. And I think the margin for – here's the other thing too, Trip. I think the margin for error for a couple of losses for Miami is greater than it is for Texas Tech because I just think there's a bigger gap between the top couple of teams in the ACC than there is in the Big 12. If you lose a couple games in the Big 12, like we've seen the last 2 years, you're going to be in like a group of like 6 or 7 teams potentially. And I have a tough time seeing Miami losing 2 games this year, although it's probably silly for me to say because they've done that each of the last 2 years. But I said to you the other day, Trev, I think this is actually Miami's most talented team of the last 3 years, just all around. I think this is their most talented team. It's close, but I just think the reason, and certainly what better coach than what the 2024 team was. Because if this isn't their most talented team, the 24 team would have been.
Yep.
Which obviously was a team that underachieved a little bit more. I would imagine, I would argue, but they weren't coached as well. And I think that's a big factor.
Agreed.
Got a couple
Especially
super chats, Trev. I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh gosh. Corey Heatherman did a tremendous job with that team last year on defense. There's no question. If you put a super chat in, it does go to the top of the board, Trev. And we have a super chat here from Benny J. Thank you, Benny.
Appreciate the super chat. Happy Friday, IB. Can you provide some insight on how Notre Dame approaches recruit flip targets?
Honestly, it's not a whole lot different, Benny, than how they recruit every other player. It's just, look, we're going to sell you on our vision. We're going to tell you what makes Notre Dame unique. We're going to tell you why you fit here and then try to get you to visit and see how things go. They don't they don't have I don't believe they have the same rule they had in the past where you have to decommit before you take an official visit. I don't think that rule exists anymore, but we didn't really have that come up last year. So I'm not 100% sure on that, but they used to have a rule, and this is why there was a corner they recruited a couple years ago who's committed to Texas Tech, and he was going to visit, but he wouldn't decommit from Texas Tech. And so they said, look, if you're committed to another school, we can't have you on a visit. We have a rule. You have to decommit, and we don't let our commits take visits either. If one of our commits visits somewhere else, he's no longer committed. And so I believe that has changed, but we just haven't seen it tested. It was never the rule for unofficials. It was just for official visits. So I don't think they change anything. They don't do anything like secretive. Hey, don't tell the school you're talking to about us. Nothing like that. I think they handle it like they do every other recruit. I think the only thing that's different is if they feel they're in a good place with a kid, they'll ask the kid to, hey, be honest with the school that you're committed to. Kind of let them know what's going on, be straight with them, and do the right thing. I had another mailbag or another playoff question from Salty Trev that we'll get to as well.
Which team is more likely to be in the college football playoffs, Michigan or LSU?
Ooh, I'm going to say LSU, and here's why I say that. Number one, I think LSU has a better roster than Michigan. Number one, I'm actually more confident in Michigan's quarterback this year, but I think overall, I think LSU has the advantage. I think both teams have tough schedules. I don't think that I'm not someone who believes that Michigan's got some easy schedule or LSU's got some easy schedule. I think both teams have a chance, but I think in the SEC, you got to finish in the top 4. You're in. You're flat out in. You finish in the top 4 in the Big Ten, it's not a guarantee you're in. And I think there's more room for a team outside the top 2, and I view the top 2 as Texas and Georgia. I think there's a lot more room for 6 or 7 teams to jump into the top 4 than there is in the Big Ten, where I think there's 3 teams that are clearly better than everybody else. And then there's some gaps between those 3, and then Michigan, USC, teams like that. And if Michigan's the 4th best team in their league, which FanDuel has Michigan as having the 4th best odds in the Big Ten, I don't think that's a given that you're going to get in because of what we just saw. I think it'll be very hard-pressed for me to believe that a 4th SEC team won't get in. And we had, in 2024, I know Texas obviously got in, Georgia got in, Tennessee got in. I think that was the only 3, unless I'm forgetting someone. Am I forgetting somebody in 2024, Trev? So, hold on, 2024 college football playoff. I feel like I'm forgetting someone from that playoff, but see, it was so Georgia, Texas, Tennessee. Yeah, there's only 3. I think that's an anomaly, and that's why they got the rules changed, how you consider strength of schedule and all that, and that's why we saw 5 this year. I also think there's just better teams in the SEC 4 to 7 or 8 than there is in the Big Ten. If you look at the FanDuel odds, Trev, LSU's 3rd best odds to win the SEC. So I would give slightly better odds to LSU, but I do think it's close. I actually am higher on Michigan this year than I have been the last couple of years. Just for a host of reasons, coaching being the primary one. But I as good as Kyle Whittingham is, he hasn't proven he can take a team to the playoff. Lane Kiffin has.
Yeah, it's close. I'm going to go with LSU as well. The other thing, too, is, and I'm a big fan of Kyle Whittingham as a coach, and I think he's the right person for the job. We can have a discussion whether that was Michigan's intention or if it was just kind of the perfect storm that Utah just elected to move away from Kyle Whittingham around the same time that all the Sherrone Moore stuff started to go down. But we've seen a lot of coaches have an adjustment period to when they go over to the Big Ten. I mean, I guess outside of Oregon, Dan Lanning, his first year in the Big Ten, went 13-0 and won the conference. But Washington hasn't really been the same program. There's been some new coaches that when they get into the Big Ten, there's an adjustment period. For Lane, he's staying in the SEC, which I also think is somewhat of an advantage. Not too much, but he's going to be familiar with a lot of the stadiums, familiar with a lot of the travel and, that sort of regimen. Whereas Kyle Whittingham, it's like, okay, this year, instead of going out and playing at Arizona State or playing at BYU, you're going and playing inside of the Horseshoe. You get Oklahoma at home in the Big House. You get Oregon on the road in Eugene. So it is a little bit of a different beast, but not too much. But I'll say this, Brian, both teams have a potential to make strong impressions on the committee. Michigan has like 5 games where if they can go like 3-2 in those games, LSU has 5-6. Yeah, I mean, Michigan gets Oklahoma at home, they get Iowa at home, Indiana at home, and then they get Oregon and Ohio State on the road. If you can go 3-2 in those games, or depending on what those games look like, if you're 2-3 and you finish the season 9-3 overall, I think that discussion starts to become real interesting. And then same thing with LSU. They get Clemson at home, Ole Miss on the road, Texas A&M at home. They get Alabama at home, Texas at home. And then Tennessee on the road is kind of that quasi maybe 6 game, depending on how they shape out. Same thing with Auburn. They get them on the road as well. So a lot of opportunity for both teams to make a strong impression on the committee. But between the two, I'd probably go with LSU.
And that's the thing, right? There's a lot more chances for them to make an impression on the committee. I think when you look at Michigan, you mentioned Oklahoma, you mentioned Iowa, you mentioned Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State. I would throw in their Penn State in there. I think you could throw Minnesota in there. How improved is Michigan State going to be this season? There's a lot of those things, but that also means there's more opportunities for teams to beat you. And that's what, and if I look at that, I'm more confident that Lane Kiffin will avoid some of those bad losses than I am Michigan, because I think LSU has a better roster than Michigan as well. So you and I have talked too, Trev. I think both leagues are going to be better in the middle than they were last year. I just have, going into this year, a little bit more confidence that I just see more jumps from those middle of the road SEC teams, which could, the thing I'm pointing out about that is that could end up helping Michigan if I'm right, because that means some of those teams might knock off an LSU. You talk about that playing at Auburn. Well, if we're talking about last year's rosters, last year's teams, LSU will win that one with a real coach that knows how to not choke on the road. Yeah, sure. But now it's well, that's a different Auburn team, and I have a whole lot more faith that Auburn can win that game with Byron Brown than I do Jackson, Arnold or Ashton Daniels kind of thing. So it's going to be this is why, Trev, I say it again, this is why, and I know I speak for both of us because we've had this conversation. This is why I'm so excited to watch this season. This is why I think this is going to be such a fun college football season. I really do think it's going to be a blast.
I'm with you completely.
A couple super chats, Trev.
From our guy, Tyler Evans. Appreciate you, man. Do you have any upsets this year? Mine is Michigan over Oregon.
Michigan at Oregon? You think Michigan's going to beat Oregon on the road? Oh, man, that's a big one. I haven't really scoured the schedules yet, Trev, to have one. Do you have? Looks like you have one. Let me hear it.
Yeah, I got Auburn in the Iron Bowl this year in Bryant-Denny.
Nice. Dude, we're going to look like freaking geniuses or morons, depending on how Auburn plays this season, because we are all on the Auburn train this offseason, bro. Not that we think Auburn's like some playoff team. We just think they're going to be a lot better than they've been. And even if you look at last year, Trevor, and you look at how bad they were, I mean, they were a 5-17, but they were a bad officiating call away from being up on Georgia 17-0 at halftime. I mean, they were basically just choking the game away against Alabama. They should have won that game. They lost to Vanderbilt in overtime. They lost to Kentucky by a touchdown. They lost to Missouri in overtime. They lost to Texas A&M by 6. Then they lost to Oklahoma on the road by 7. That team was not far away from being a 9-10 win team. Better coaching and better quarterback play completely changes that football team. Now, that's some big losses. Obviously, Keldrick Falk, some other guys, Cam Coleman, but that's still a talented football team that's going to be coached a lot better. I'm very curious to see what they're going to look like this year. But we've been hard on the Auburn train, and we're going to look like idiots, or we're going to look like flipping savants if depending on how that season goes.
I'm hoping it's the latter, but there is a method to my madness outside of loving Byron Brown in that roster. That Alabama defense is undisciplined, man. And Kane Womack is going to have to take a real hard look in the mirror. And if there's one quarterback that I would want under center in a game like that to take advantage of an undisciplined defense, I mean, Byron Brown could put up some Heisman caliber numbers in that game potentially. But I do think Alabama's offense will be improved. Dude, the final score of that game could be like 38-35. It could be one of the more high scoring Iron Bowl games that we've seen in quite some time. So yeah, I'm excited for that one, but I'm calling that my upset right now on April 10th. We'll see if it comes to fruition.
Love it. You know what, Trev? I'm going to make a note of this in our master topics thing. Is I think we should do a segment on biggest upset watch games in 2026. That's now going to be a segment we're going to do at some point in time this offseason. That's a great topic. Great topic. You had another one from Tyler Evans, Trev.
Appreciate you again, Tyler. How jealous do you think that the SEC is of the Big Ten due to Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio State and UCLA? I think that meant to be Ohio State or
UCLA women's basketball.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So this is basically just Indiana winning the football, Michigan winning men's basketball, and UCLA winning. I know I keep forgetting they're a Big Ten team too. It's ridiculous that they're a Big Ten team.
Makes sense. But how jealous do you think they are of them, Brian?
Yeah. Well, I think it adds to the fact of why there was confusion in Trevor reading the question, because Trevor's thinking the last 3 football national championships. And I think that bothers them a lot more than the fact that they didn't win the SEC championships. I mean, outside of Kentucky, is there really anybody in the SEC that has like this long storied basketball tradition? Like Florida's had a couple short stints. Obviously, they had the stint under Billy Donovan where they won a couple national titles. I still remember they had that really good Final Four team. I think it was Lon Kruger. I think led them to a Final Four with. You remember his name? I forget the guy's name. It was like they called him the meat hook. He had this real 6'7", just real big forward. But outside of that, and then obviously they won the title last year. But like they're not like this. Kentucky, Arkansas had that great run under Nolan Richardson, legendary basketball coach Nolan Richardson. Even going back before the Corliss Williamson days, but even going back in the late 80s, they were, making Final Four runs with some really good basketball teams. But, I don't know that the SEC has the basketball tradition of the Big Ten, in my opinion, where you look at, or especially not the ACC. So I don't know that bothers them. If they're dominating football, I don't know that it bothers them that they're not dominating basketball. Again, and that's other than Kentucky. I maybe I'm missing somebody, but there's anybody else that's an old school SEC team that has some long storied history of basketball success.
Old school SEC,
like in Indiana, like a Duke, like a North Carolina. Like I don't. There's been good teams. There's been stretches where they're good. Arkansas has been that for had some stretches like that. Arkansas has got a national championship. And under Nolan Richardson, I just don't see it being like what we see here. Missouri's had some great teams over the years. I still remember the Anthony Peeler days back in the day, but it's not like Michigan State and Indiana, and, Michigan and Iowa, teams like that, where basketball is like this long storied thing. So just my 2 cents on it. But no, I definitely think they're jealous, as the Big Ten was jealous of the SEC when the SEC was dominating them all sports. Like the Big Ten's gone a long time without championships in basketball. The last Big Ten national championship in men's basketball was Michigan State back in wasn't 2000, something like that. Like when did Tom Izzo win his title with Mateen Cleaves? Was it? Let me go find this real quick. But it had been a long time. So I don't think the Big Ten should get like too, it was 1999-2000 season, Trev, was the last time that the Big Ten team has won it. Now, I still say that Michigan got screwed out of the title in 2013. That was that call on Trey Burke when he blocked the point guard's shot. I'm still pissed about that when that was such a bad call. But whatever, it is what it is. But you're hot now for a couple years. The SEC's been doing that for like 15 years in football. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you won the titles this year, but like there's a lot more basketball titles from SEC teams in the last 5, 6, 7 years, men's and women's. Obviously you've got Florida won the national title last year. LSU and South Carolina have both won women's championships in the last 5 years. Like, don't start feeling too good about yourself because you're hot right now, because this thing can change in a hurry in this world of NIL. But yes, the SEC would be jealous, as is everybody else. Every other conference is jealous of what the Big Ten is doing right now as well. just like people were jealous of what the SEC was doing when they were dominating all those sports.
100%. Super chat from Jersey Bear. Appreciate you. What is your favorite non-Notre Dame college football tradition? I like the Iowa wave.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Man, I got to tell you, Trev, I don't know that I necessarily had one until I went to Florida State in 2014 and watched that game and watched Chief. It's Osceola. Is that the name, right? Isn't that his name?
Mm-hmm.
But watching that dude come out on the horse, and I think horses are just exceptionally created beings, but the crowd going crazy and him throwing that spike into the mid, that on fire spear into the midfield and the crowd erupting. Not gonna lie, Trev, that was legit. Like I've been to Clemson, right? I've seen that. Trev, you've seen that in person. It's cool, right? And doing it it's cool. I like it. I've been to Michigan and they run out and hit the sign, which is lame. It's like you don't even have a real sign like Notre Dame does. I've been to trying to think of some other places I've been where they've got these cool traditions. I've been to Virginia Tech twice, Lane Stadium with the Metallica thing. And it's whatever. I've said it's overrated in person. Man, that's I've been to USC where the guy sticks the sword in midfield and all that, and it's whatever. It's cool, But bro, I'm telling you, there's nothing like when that dude throws that spear into the ground in midfield. That on fire spear at midfield, like that is like, okay, I'm actually fired up right now. That was pretty cool. I've said this before. People talk about Enter Sandman. That is super lame in person because it takes forever. Like, it's awesome on TV because you just see the very end of it. Being there, it's like, okay, are they literally playing this song on loop? Because it's taking these guys freaking forever to get through this thing and come out of the stadium. And it's like, how tired are these people jumping outside there? Like, okay, can you guys please come out of the tunnel now? I've jumped 87,000 times. It's taking forever. I think that's really kind of lame. But just the in-person ones, there's nothing like what they do at Florida State. That's freaking awesome. Now, again, I haven't seen the Buffalo come running out in Colorado. I haven't seen the dudes on the wagon in Oklahoma. I would imagine I won't think that's very cool, Somebody in the chat said the eagle flying around Jordan Hare. Haven't seen that, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to beat the spear at midfield that Florida State does. That's flipping awesome.
Yeah, I don't
That's awesome.
I don't have a favorite. I just have a bucket list of things that I want to go see in person, like in the crowd. Because being in the crowd and then being in the press box is also different. Like I've seen some cool moments inside of Notre Dame Stadium where it's like I can compare because like I know what it feels like. Brian, I know you can too. I know what it feels like being in the press box versus being in the crowd when you're immersed in it versus when you're like watching it from above. And so I have a bucket list of things that I want to go see in person. I saw Clemson's in person in the crowd. That was fine. Some of it was just also the game. They were playing like Louisville and they were like 1-9 and they were terrible and it was a noon kickoff. It doesn't have the theatrics that it would have in a night game versus a big time opponent. I get that. I saw in the crowd Ohio State dot the I. I get it. I know the history and the tradition of the band.
Yeah.
I thought it was lame. Like it is what it is.
That was cooler for me the first time I saw it, Trev, but I was in the 5th grade. And I grew up in Ohio, so like that's the one, because it's the state I'm from. But when I saw it a couple years ago, I was like, okay, this is lame.
Yeah, it's fine. They're obsessed with their 4-letter state. It is what it is. I want to see, but my bucket list of things that I want to see in person, I want to see Wisconsin jump around. I think that would be sweet to be in the crowd. I want to see Rocky Top go down to a game at Neyland Stadium. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I do want to be a part of the Iowa thing.
No. I don't ever want to be in person singing Rocky Top. And you don't want to know why? And I'm mad at you for bringing it up, Trevor. Every time I hear that song, it sticks in my head for weeks. I'll just be walking around the house. I mean, it's the worst. It just gets stuck in there and it won't come out. It's like the most catchy jingle ever. I hate it. I hate it for how catchy it is because it just sticks in my head. My wife's like, "What are you humming?" And I'm like, "Rocky Top." I'm just so ashamed of myself. I can't get it out of my freaking head. Oh, I hate Rocky Top for that reason. I don't even like the words being said. And you did it, Trevor. Now I'm going to be singing it all weekend. Oh, I'm so mad.
Sorry, man. Sorry, but it's one that I want to go see. It's one that I want to go see. I want to see Florida State's as well. I think that'd be sweet. I have a long bucket list of things that I want to go see in college football.
The Florida State one is awesome, dude. It really is cool. It really is cool.
Super chat from Charlie Weiss, last belt loop. A&M walkout to power by Kanye West, especially that night game when I was in the student section, was awesome. The only Notre Dame fan surrounded by the enemy. I believe it. That game, they brought it back. They got rid of it for a while. Like, they would do that, I think, when like Johnny Manziel was there, and then when Trevor Knight was their quarterback. But then they got rid of it, and it was like a big deal that they brought it back, I guess, for when Notre Dame came in town. So,
yeah, I mean, I guess when did that song come out? It wasn't that long ago, right? Like,
808 and Heartbreaks came out when I was in like high school.
Yeah, but like, that's not that long of a tradition, you know? So.
Super chat from Shaquille Oatmeal. Appreciate you, Rocky Top, and also my mailbag question.
We'll get to your mailbag question, but yes. Oh, that song, Trev. That song, I tell you what, buddy. It gets me.
From Salty, which team will start the season number 1 ranked by the AP poll?
I would imagine my prediction it'll be at Ohio State or Texas would be my prediction for who's number 1. I know who'll be number 1 on my ranking. It'll be Indiana because you guys know my stance on that. But I don't know, Trev, who do you think? I think it's Ohio State or Texas. I don't think Notre Dame will be ranked number 1. I don't think Georgia will be ranked number 1. I don't think Indiana. I don't think Oregon. I think those 2 teams will probably be the biggest names. If I had to only pick one, I'd probably lean towards Ohio State.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Ohio State. ESPN's kind of already buried their shovel of hyping up Texas. They did that last year, and then they didn't even make the playoffs. Ohio State's going to be that team with Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sane and all that. So it'll be Ohio State. No doubt in my mind about that. From Iden Benami, how would you feel if you're Brett Bielema right now? Camden Lapati going all over and probably decommitting.
That's life. I mean, that's recruiting, you know, so you go find your next guy. That's what it is. Yeah, that's coaching nowadays. Everybody's got to prepare for that.
Yeah. From Mark on the radio, which position group will you be most interested to watch at the Blue Gold game on both offense and defense? For him, the trenches on both sides, offensive line and defensive line, specifically Francis Brew.
You know, Trev, it depends. I mean, part of the answer is going to depend on how do they pick their teams. If they do what they've done in the past, then I don't really care a whole lot about the offensive line because we won't see the starting offensive line playing together. It's individual players. Hey, here's how Will Black played, things like that. Will Black is probably an individual player that I'm most curious about. I think for me, it's the wide receivers.
Yeah,
I'm very curious to see how they, how they are, playing in front of that crowd and going in a more live situation against the DBs. I'm very curious to see how they perform. Very curious. Other than that, it's just a bunch of individual players here and there. Same. If we get the offensive line, the first team offensive line playing together, then that might shake up my Q&A a little bit. Same?
Yeah. I said same.
Yeah. Aiden Benami, real quick, I'm seeing your question. I don't know what quotes you're talking about on Twitter regarding Will Black, so I have no idea what you're talking about. So you're gonna have to give me some context a little bit before we can answer your question. So I'll leave that starred, but you're gonna have to share with me what you're referring to before we can address that. I go on Twitter and basically tweet what I want to tweet, and then sometimes respond to people respond to me. I don't sit there and look for. So I'm not sure what you're referring to.
From John A1, Notre Dame overall depth has reached levels I've never seen in my Notre Dame fandom since 2000. Will the 2026 team field or produce the most stars since 2000? Well, John, I can't speak too much about like the stars on the 2000 roster, but it has the potential. This is the most loaded roster I've also seen in my fandom, and you and I have both seen a lot of very loaded teams. 05, 11, 12, 15, 17, 18, and then some of the Marcus Freeman teams as well. But I think they actually, I think they have the potential to. Will they have anybody on their team that is the same level of star power as like a Manti? Maybe, or like a Jalen Smith or Will Fuller potentially, but I think there's going to be more stars sprinkled throughout the entire roster than just a guy here, a guy there. Obviously, CJ Carr probably leads that charge. He's been the most talked about player on Notre Dame, but you filter it across the board. I mean, there's a chance one of the running backs enters that conversation. You have multiple offensive linemen in that conversation, a lot of wide receivers with potential in that conversation, multiple defensive linemen in that conversation. Obviously, linebackers speak for themselves. You already have Leonard Moore, and then you're kind of just waiting for the other DBs to enter that conversation nationally as well. So, yeah, in short, I think that they will produce the most stars.
So I'm trying to think, Trev, since 2000, would you agree with my statement that the 05-06 team and the 15 team had the most stars, like perceived stars?
Yep.
05-06, you had Brady Quinn, you had Samardzija, you had Tom Zimikowski was obviously a guy. I would argue Victor Abimiri was getting tons of love back then. Like I would say that you had that group. 15, you had Will Fuller, Jalen Smith, Ronnie Stanley, CJ Prosise, I think are guys kind of off the top of my head. Sheldon Day was unbelievable, that good that year, All-American caliber player. I think you could argue last year's team was close. You know, with I mean, you had two unanimous All-Americans on last year's team that were, you know, one won the Doak. I mean, Jeremiah Love and Leonard Moore. I think the reason, to your point, that will they be perceived the same way? I don't know that Leonard Moore will ever. If Leonard Moore's a better cornerback this year than Jeremiah Love was a running back last year, I still don't think he gets the same attention that Jeremiah Love gets, but he can still be perceived as a star.
Yep.
CJ Carr, you know, Leonard Moore, Boubacar Traore, either Drake or Kingston at linebacker, Tay Johnson or Don Schuler at safety. You know, maybe somebody breaks out along the offensive line. I'm with you, Trev. I think this team could have the most volume of star power that we've seen at Notre Dame in some time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's why I'm so excited about this roster. It's why we're so excited about what's kind of on the brink for this team. So very interested to see how that'll all pan out. But the list of candidates is significantly more lengthy than any other team, because the biggest difference when I look at this is it's not just the guys in the starting lineup. There's going to be people that emerge that become stars or breakout stars on this offense or defense that might not even start. Who knows? Whereas in 05 and 06, it's like you knew, especially in 06, it was going to be Samardzija, it was going to be Rima McKnight if he was healthy, but I don't think a whole lot of people expected, and this is no disrespect to him, I just didn't think anybody expected David Grimes to be the next big thing in 06 in the same way that Samardzija and Rima McKnight were. Whereas, would it surprise you if Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham didn't start, but then emerged midway through the season, became stars by the end of the year after the playoffs? No. So there's the list of candidates is significantly more lengthy on this roster.
Yeah. Another good one from John A1. This is a really good one.
With Jaden Osbury playing middle linebacker, will allow him to sub at middle linebacker during the season in a package?
I could see that, John, like that. I didn't really think about that. I would have hopefully gotten to that as we started projecting more to 2026. Trevor and I have talked a lot about how we think Jaden Osbury is playing Mike is going to help. And I actually had that confirmed with a source recently, and that was in the intel piece. So just so you guys know, in the last 12 hours, I've dropped two huge intel pieces. One was a very long one on the team that Trev told me when he woke up this morning to read it, got him really fired up. And then I dropped a little recruiting intel on the board as well this afternoon before the show. So definitely a big reason to be signed up in the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com, as people in the chat will tell you. I think we actually had a comment from Tom Redger talking about the intel pieces and why they were. I agree, Tom, with your statement there. But to John's question, you know, one of the things we've heard is that it's helping him see the game so much better now that he's a Mike, and he has to understand like what everybody does, not just what him and the guys he's fitting off of does. I could see a world where in some of those sub packages, maybe you do have him at Mike, And what do you do with Drake? Well, sometimes he's just subbing for Drake. Other times, I mean, Drake turned into a pretty decent blitzer at times last year. Maybe you have Drake and Kingston both coming up in certain situations, or it's just, hey, look, this is a way for us to spell Drake in base downs. We want to keep Drake on the field all the time in base downs. This is a way for us to take a little bit of the burden off of his legs by, in certain sub packages, putting Jaden Alsbury and Mike. Whether they do that or not, I don't know, but they definitely have the option now of doing it based on his experience this spring playing Mike, and then how well he's played, and how well he's handled it and how good he's looked. Certainly something that I could see being an option for him. Because, like, let's just say something happens to Drake's, out for a game, right? And what was the thing? Somebody gave me a great idea to say the other day, because I didn't want to say, like, miss the team bus or something like that. I'm going to have to find the comment. But Grubbing Up Heisman had one. Let me find it real quick. He said, here we go. He said, have the flu or stomach bug right when they wake up, right? So he didn't do anything wrong. No long-term injury. I had to miss a start in high school pitching because I had Taco Bell the night before, and it did not sit well in my body. Got a little food poisoning. So let's go with that. He's got the stomach bug. He'll be fine. He can't play. Well, on third down, do you want to have Kingston playing Mike if he's your, sub-package pass rusher? No. So, maybe Madden Frame was that guy, but now you have the option of Jaden Alsbury being that guy who could play that position for you. So I think it makes a ton of sense to have him do that. I could definitely see him doing that. Will they do it? I don't know, but it gives them just one more option of one more talented player that can help you out in different sub packages.
Yeah, I think Osbury getting a lot of this experience at Mike over the spring is also going to help Kingston ease back into the field of play, because now instead of having him come back, it's like, all right, Kingston, some of your reps are going to be divvied up spelling Drake. Others are going to be as an edge rusher. Others are going to be at will. Now it allows Kingston just, hey, work your way back into the will linebacker rotation, and then we'll see where you're at on third down. I think that also eases that transition a lot more as well. It's going to be huge this fall. I really think so.
Agree. Here's got one from Dirtbag Jake Trev, little women's basketball one. So we said you can get those in there if you want. So let's get to that one here real quick.
Do you think there's real smoke to the Audie Crooks to Notre Dame hype?
Yes. Now, am I saying that smoke in regards to, hey, I think she's going to come to Notre Dame? No. Do I think that there's legitimate interest between the two sides? Yes. I talked to Sean Stiers for a little bit last night because I wanted to kind of get his thoughts on things, and I do. Now, is that the direction Notre Dame's going to go? That we don't know, but there's definitely interest there on both sides. I think for Notre Dame, I think the decision is to get her, you're going to have to basically put all your NIL money into getting her. And then maybe you get like a Vanessa DeJesus type of player, a couple of those type of players in the post, and then at guard, with your to also, because you're going to need like probably at least 2 to 3 girls out of the portal. I don't think you want to go into the season with Hannah, Audie Cooks, KK Prosper, and then a bunch of girls that have never played a minute of basketball. I mean, that includes Leah Macy, who was another McDonald's All-American who was hurt all year last year. She got hurt in high school, and she missed all of last year. Then you've got the 5 incoming players, 2 of which were McDonald's All-Americans, JC Abi and then Jenica Lewis. But like Amari Biles is legit. Bella Ragone is legit, although she also injured her knee in high school, so who knows where she's going to be. And then I can't remember the name of the other girl that they got, but she's like 6'3". She's like a legit post. Her game is all down low. She can hit like 10 to 15-foot jumpers, but she's a true post. Where like Amari Biles and JC Abi are kind of like, they can play in the post, but they can stretch, they can shoot threes. Like, they're kind of wing, they're kind of 3s and 4s, where this girl's kind of a 4-5. But she's also a really good volleyball player that's going to play volleyball at Notre Dame also. So, like, she's got some – I mean, you watch her play volleyball, like, this girl can get off the ground. Like, but, like, are you really want to count on them to be starters and your entire depth? Or do you want to go get a couple vets? Or do you use your NIL money to get, like, 3 really good players but no stars? I think that's the decision that Notre Dame has to make. Personally, if you can get Audie Crooks – and then like a Vanessa DeJesus type guard, and then like a a similar type of post player, like maybe like the tall I can't remember the girl's name they got from TC or K-State last year. She was like 6'4". She just gave him good rebounding defense minutes in the post, played 20 minutes a game. If that's the way I would go, if you can make it happen. But just know if you get Audie Crooks, you're not going to get any other stars in the portal. You're just going to get some role players, which I think is fine. I mean, how many stars do you really need? We saw that problem with Notre Dame last year where, like I saw a mock draft come from ESPN where they had Olivia Miles going number 1 overall. So you have Olivia Miles on last year's team, Hannah Hidalgo, who will be probably a top 5 draft pick. You had Sonia Citron, who was a top draft pick and had really good, rookie year in the WNBA. I mean, you had plenty of stars on that team 2 years ago, and they couldn't get past the Sweet 16 because they just could never, play as a team. I wonder if that third star is really necessary. Give me that legit post presence with Hannah, KK, Leah, and the freshman, and then just 2 vets, maybe a wing, a forward, another guard, something like that can handle the ball. That's why I think like a Vanessa De Jesus type of player. And this team is going to be loaded, in my opinion, absolutely loaded. But if they go that route, we'll see. But I definitely think it's a legit possibility. I definitely think that, Trev. What do you
I'm with
think?
You. No, you're good, man. I think it just depends on what they want to do. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong decision. Just how do you want to construct your roster? How does Neil Ivey want to construct a roster for the 2027 basketball season or the 26 basketball season? That who knows? Do you rely on your depth being a very talented 5-person transfer or a high school recruiting class, and then you go out and you spend a lot of money on Audie Crooks? I don't think that there's a wrong answer, but I'll tell you this: I do think there's some mutual interest. I do, and that's going to be very interesting to see how that unfolds.
Yeah. It's going to be at least one basketball team is, get you excited about next year. So
what's the other one?
We'll see. I said at least one.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I'm just excited about one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like at least somebody's getting me excited. That kind of comment.
I was making a joke. Yeah. I knew it.
Yeah, I'd just say take all the portal money from the men's team and give it to the women's team. Like, hey, your guys' budget's going to go down a little bit because you're going to be terrible no matter what happens. We're going to throw a little bit of money over here, and we're going to make a run at the title in women's basketball. For those in the chat, somebody asked, who did Audie Crooks play for? Iowa State.
Yeah.
So we've actually seen her play in the Joyce Center in Purcell Pavilion. She was part of that Iowa State team was in Notre Dame's bracket the year before, and because in women's basketball, like the highest seeded team gets like that you play in their court. So the first 2 rounds were in Notre Dame, and she played there. So she's a really good basketball player. Somebody in the chat said she's a defensive liability. I can't tell you that I've watched her enough to know if that's true or not, but I think that post presence as a scoring would make this offense very hard to stop, as long as her and Hannah can like form a connection. But could you imagine her and Hannah working pick and rolls next year?
That'd be nasty.
Yeah, that would be fun. That'd be a lot of fun.
Getting into the next part of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the Friday free-for-all mailbag going on. We have BD Loves Brian Van Gorder up next with a question here.
You
Brian,
just got to say the whole thing. You can't just give me the initials like that guy. You have to say the whole thing, Trev. Why are you trying to hurt me today? Well,
just in case anybody doesn't know who BVG is, okay. Between the podcast
it's probably better
and,
for those people. It's probably better for those people not to know. Trev's trying to. He's like got that knife in there and like twisting it, pulls it out, puts a little salt on it, puts it back in there. It's hurtful.
Yeah, you know me, big hurtful guy.
I know.
Brian, are you and McElroy still cool? I love Greg as an analyst, but he was out of line in that argument. It's like he thought that you were some stupid fanboy kid. The line about your credibility was rude.
It was rude. It was also inaccurate. I think my comments got proven to be correct in the postseason. I don't know that Greg and I were ever cool or not cool. I don't know him personally. I've only ever spoken to him on their show. So you'd have to ask him. I'm a big boy. Somebody wants to come at me on the show. It's his show and say whatever he wants on the show. And I think, you said I think it was a bad moment for him. And I know that there were some other people on part of that show that thought it was a bad moment. It is what it is. It's football, man. It is what it is. I got no beef with Greg. I don't think that I'll be back on that show again. Let's just say I haven't gotten any invites to go back on that show recently since that time, and I don't think that I'll get any. But it is what it is. It's all good. I've got plenty of shows to go on, mainly this one every single day. But I have no ill will towards Greg. I think Greg's a really good analyst. I think he's a really sharp guy. I think that was just a bad day. And guess what? We all have those. We all have those days. We have those days where you say, man, I wish I could have handled that differently. And I would hope that Greg feels that way also. But if you liked Greg before that day, I wouldn't have. I've had some people say I haven't watched him since. I wouldn't stop watching him. He had a bad day. There's a reason you liked him in the first place, and so I wouldn't stop watching him. But I have no beef with Greg. I think the only thing I have an issue with is now he's one of those people that's like, we never landed on the moon. It's like, okay, buddy, whatever you say, pal. But no, I have no beef with Greg. I think he's a good analyst. But yes, he was out of line, and that was a silly, petty comment. It's like, make an argument. Tell me why I'm wrong. So I think Alabama proved that everything we said about them last year was correct, that they didn't belong in the playoffs last year. But you real quick, you also got to give him a little bit of a defense, though. Alabama's different for him. You can say, well, he's an analyst. He's got to he's got to be unbiased. I mean, I get that, but this guy didn't just go to Alabama. He played for and won a title at Alabama. It's hard, how easy would it be for us as fans of Notre Dame if we actually played at Notre Dame and won a title at Notre Dame to just put that aside with no problem? I think that'd be hard. So I'll give him a little benefit of the doubt on that one as well. But he has a blind spot when it comes to Alabama. Outside of that, I think Greg is an outstanding analyst.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel the same. Definitely feel the same. Super chat from Riley Erdman. Appreciate you. Will game one, the Shamrock game, have Shamrock Series uniforms? Also, which ones are a favorite for you guys?
I would imagine so. And in the past, haven't they released those over the summer? Like those videos? Remember when they used to do? I hope they do that again. Those were awesome.
Me too.
I'm bummed that they don't do those anymore. When they would do those, one was they did the thing from Hangover.
Yeah.
Right. They did the one from Jerry Maguire. And then they did one. What's the name of that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio? The movie where he's an investment guy. Never watched it. What's it?
Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah. Didn't they do one with him too? Like, didn't they do one year? It wasn't about their uniforms, but it was something else that they did I think a thing with Marcus Freeman on that. But so yeah, I mean, those were awesome. I don't know why they stopped doing those. Maybe they just cost too much, but those were really cool. I would love it if they would do some kind of reveal with that again. But we've been asked the question before about the uniforms. I really liked the 15 uniforms in person. They were not as good in place. I really liked the Yankee Stadium uniforms from the neck down. I still say if they would have just kept the gold helmet, Trev, that would have been the perfect Shamrock Series uniform. I know the 13 ones, I know a lot of people like the 13 ones. I just don't remember those as much because I was coaching that year. So I wasn't as locked in to but some of the others, I don't know that I've loved some of the others. But yeah, the 15 ones were really sharp. I really liked those. What about you?
Trying to go back through and think. I loved the 13 ones against Arizona State. The all white with the chrome gold helmet and the green chrome face mask was dope with the shamrock on the helmet. I love the 22 ones, sensing a theme with the all white. I just think all white is a very clean look.
Which one was 22?
The ones in Vegas, the all white
Vegas
with
one,
the gold trims. Yeah, that was sweet. Didn't mess with the helmets at all. I like those. Yeah, since I didn't get to see them in person, I didn't love the 15 ones. Yeah. Those are the ones that they wore at Fenway when they played Boston College, right?
It It was the numbers were the same colors, the uniform. It was tough to see them
Yeah.
on TV. But like up close and personal, like, oh my gosh, those were so sweet looking.
Yeah.
But they just didn't look good. Like, and it was so hard being in the press box. It was so hard to see what was
Oh,
what.
I
Like,
bet, bro.
it was tough. I mean, you kind of knew who was who just by like, okay, that's Will Fuller, but like you couldn't see the numbers.
A sleeper one was honestly the 2024 ones at Yankee Stadium. I really judged those. I was like, I don't know. Like when they first came out, I was like,
hated those when they first came out, Trev.
same. Like the gothic gold numbering and lettering I didn't love. And I was like, that's a weird shit. Like I understand what they were trying to do. It was like the anniversary of the Four Horsemen, but I was like, I just the color blue was weird. Seeing them in person, I was like, oh, these are pretty sick.
And they were really cool on TV. I thought
Yeah.
they looked really cool on TV.
Big fan.
Yep. The worst ones I felt were the ones they used at war against Maryland. I think it was 2011.
Yeah.
With the like kickball looking helmet. That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
2012 I didn't like either. The ones against Miami. There was nothing about those uniforms I liked, especially when they messed with the helmet. But even like the jerseys, I just didn't. I wasn't.
It was weird because like the stripe on the helmet didn't split it down the middle. It was like a third of the helmet.
Yeah,
I did not like
bizarre.
that. Yeah.
Very bizarre. Yeah. Very, very strange.
From Salty, which coach is doing more to elevate or improve his team, Steve Sarkisian or Mike Elko?
Well, I would give the edge to Mike Elko, but the big reason for that is because he had further to go since he arrived. I mean, Steve Sarkisian's already brought them a pretty long way. I mean, Steve Sarkisian took over a team that wasn't very good. I think they had a losing record his first year. They didn't win 10 games until 2023 was the first time they won 10 games. And they had 5-7 in year one, 8-5 in year two. And since then, they've been a 10+ win team every year. And so I think he's done a much better job there than he gets credit for, in my opinion. But when you just look at since Mike Elko arrived, I think he's done more to build A&M up, but that's because in the last 2 years, A&M had a lot further to go. So it's not so much he's better than Sark. It's like Sark already did his work. Now it's just about getting over the top, where Elko took over a program that was just a mess, and he's now had to get them. And in 2 years, he's got them in the playoffs. I'll say this. Mike Elko turned A&M around a lot faster than Sark turned around Texas. There's no question about that. It didn't, and not till year 3. The caveat, however, is there were things in his that he could do to rebuild A&M that Sark couldn't do because we didn't have the transfer portal the way that we did now in 2022. Would Sark have been able to build it quicker if he had that? We don't know. So that's why it's hard to compare their stages in year 1 and 2 against each other because it's a different world. You know, like is Texas A&M in the playoffs last year if they can't get transfer portal guys? So no Mario Craver, no Casey Concepcion, we could kind of no Will Lee, like the Armaj Adams kid was a transfer. There's some pretty good players that they had that they counted on a lot last year that they wouldn't have had if it wasn't for the transfer portal. So it's hard to compare, but in recent years, A&M's the one who's done more to elevate it, but there was more room to elevate. It's kind of like if you look at first year coaches, who's gonna do more to elevate their team? Well, if a coach took over a team like Lane Kiffin takes over an LSU team that went 7-6 last year. Well, yeah. And then you look at James Franklin and he takes over a team that went, I think, 4-8 last year, 3-9 last year, something like that. Well, if Lane Kiffin goes 9-3 this year and Virginia Tech goes 7-6, well, who did more to elevate their team? Whose team made the bigger improvement? Well, it's Virginia Tech. Even though LSU has a better team. Actually, Virginia Tech was 3-9 last year. So going 7-5 is a 4-game improvement. So that's how I evaluate it, Trev, is one coach has done more because he needed to do more because the program was further behind than where the other one was in the last couple of years. They've both done
I definitely think
job.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair way to evaluate it. I mean, look, it's hard to compare their resumes as a whole because Sark has been there longer. I mean, he's been to 2 college football playoff semifinals. One, he was kind of voted into that. And then in 2024, they made it in a 12-team college football playoffs, whereas Mike Elko's had 1 playoff appearance at home and they scored 3 points. It's just tough. It depends on what scope. I tend to fall under where Brian evaluates it of who's had to do more, and that answer is Mike Elko. Plus, you have to factor in it's Texas A&M. They're not short of resources by any means. They don't have as many resources as Texas. And so you can also paint that picture of like, okay, he's had to do more with less. And so I think by and large, I'm going with Mike Elko as well. But it's tough if you just look at in 20 up, from then to 2025 or the end of 2025, who's done more. It's just tough because Sark's been there longer.
Yep.
Super chat from Jersey Bear. Appreciate you. Why is college football playing more games overseas? In week 0, there's a Dublin game and a Brazil game. I like college football games on college campuses.
I agree with you 1,000%. They're basically trying to be the NFL. They're trying to grow their brand nationally. Internationally, right? Like around the world. I don't know that I agree with it. I don't know that college football is something that's going to necessarily grow around the world the way that the NFL can. There's just a difference between professional sports and college sports. So that's, to me, what it does. You go play in Dublin, you're exposing yourself to the European audience. I don't know that that's – I don't know what kind of impact that's going to have. Will you turn some fans into college football fans? Of course. Of course. Will you turn them into like avid watchers of the sport? I doubt it. I doubt it. So I'm with you. I think they should be played on college campuses. I do like the idea. I've said this before. I do like the idea of season kickoff games. I grew up on kickoff classics. There was like 3. And I remember Notre Dame playing in one to kick off the '89 season. They played Virginia in the old Meadowlands, in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And there was like that. There was that one, and then there was 2 other kickoff classics. I kind of like those. They're like 3 or 4 a year. They're played on a neutral field. You get teams from different conferences. I think there's some coolness to that. But again, play it in front of American audience. This is your audience. I understand the desire to grow the brand. I understand that. But I don't like it when it's done at the expense of the people that made you who you are. Like when Notre Dame travels and gives up a home game to go play a neutral site game, I don't love that. But what they're usually going into to an area where they're trying to reach other Notre Dame fans who maybe don't have a chance to get to Notre Dame. So they go play in, Boston, they go play in New York, they play in Texas, where there's a lot of Notre Dame fans. And so I understand that. It's still in the United States, and you still have the opportunity. It's a lot harder and a lot more expensive for Notre Dame fans to travel to Brazil or, Ireland or whatever. So I'm not really a big fan of that. I'm really not a big fan of that.
Yeah, I think they should be played on college campuses as well. In terms of them playing games overseas, I'm relatively impartial, but travel's not really that big with me either. If Notre Dame plays a game in Dublin, Ireland, or a game in Minnesota, in my eyes, I'm traveling to either of them the same amount.
Yeah.
But that's just me. That's not how everybody else should look at it. It's like if Notre Dame plays a game in Brazil or they play a game in Washington State, I'm going to neither of those games. And so it stinks. I think they should be played on college campuses. But then it's like, why was the Florida-Georgia rivalry played? The greatest, what is it? Like the greatest cocktail party on land or something is the name of that rivalry.
That,
Man, it's like, why was that played at a neutral site last year? Like both Florida and Georgia have iconic home statiums. Why not play on either of those?
The tradition of that rivalry is that it's a neutral field game, though, and they play it in between the two. That's at least you can explain that one. Having lived in Jacksonville, part of the attraction of playing in Jacksonville is there's a lot of Georgia and Florida fans in Jacksonville. So I get where you're coming from, Trev. The only reason for that one, though, is the tradition is playing on a neutral field. But to your point, how great would those games be if every year they went back and forth between the home campuses of 2 schools that aren't far apart from each other?
Yep. 100%. That's how I feel about the Red River. It's cool that it's supposed to be at a neutral site, in between each camp. But you're telling me that games down at Longhorn Stadium or games up in Norman wouldn't also be just as electric. Like that's how I feel about it. So I guess I draw the line at like I just wish they were played on college campuses. We were talking about Pitt earlier this week, how we wish that was still played on a college campus and not every time Notre Dame plays Pitt on the road, it's just where the Steelers play. So that's I'm in general with college football, I'm very, very open to the new age of college football to varying degrees, but the like playing games on college campuses is one that I think that makes it unique. I think tailgates are better on college campuses. I think the atmosphere is better on college campuses. It just is, in my opinion.
The only reason I've ever been okay with Notre Dame playing in Dublin is because there's at least you're paying homage to your tradition, right? You're the Fighting Irish. You're playing a game in Ireland once a decade. I can accept that if it's infrequent. This now we're doing it every year thing, that's where I have an issue. Yeah. All right. Good. You guys are on fire today. Just so many good questions. I want to get to some people we haven't gotten to yet today. Let's go to Gavin Wright.
Any way that we can petition for our wins back? If Michigan basically just pays fines for cheating, I'm sure Notre Dame can foot a bill for our wins back. Have a great day.
I would. I don't know what the process is, but I would absolutely appeal that. Like none of the things that were done in a way that in any way, shape, form, or fashion benefited the football team. You had a few players that committed an academic infraction that basically had no bearing on them playing football. None of them would have been ineligible if they hadn't had, that girl write papers for them. It was bad. It was wrong. I'm not excusing it at all. They were wrong. I'm okay with them being suspended for the entire season. You know what you're getting into when you come to Notre Dame. You're doing your own work. I don't have any problem with the punishment that Notre Dame handed out. It stung. I wish those players would have been part of the team. And there was two different academic issues. It wasn't all the same thing. Like the Everett Golson, DeVaris Daniels thing was different than the Kavari Russell, Ishaq Williams thing. But like the other part of it is Notre Dame found out about it and Notre Dame dealt with it and then Notre Dame submitted it. And you're going to punish them harder than you punish Michigan, who lied to you every step of the way, who fought you every step of the way. It's utter nonsense. And that's one of the big things that I've had an issue with. I've also think it's absolutely stupid that you're going to say games that they won don't count, but games that they lost somehow count.
Yeah.
That's stupid. So if a game doesn't count, a game doesn't count. But I also think, and this is true for USC as well, I think it's stupid to take games away and take titles away. We all watched USC and 05 dominate. Does Notre Dame get credit for somehow beating USC now that we find out that Reggie Bush, did what he did? Yeah, punish Reggie Bush, punish the school financially, fine them millions of dollars. I've always said this a million times. You want to hit a school where it hurts, fine them. Notre Dame fans care a whole lot more about those lost wins than the University of Notre Dame does, right? And USC fans care more about that than others. The reality is that it's stupid to take away wins of games we saw unless you find out like they did something to cheat in that game. You find out that they were piped into the other team's headset. Yeah, okay, that impacted the outcome of the game. Take the win away because, you don't know that you would have won. No, USC still beats every team they play in the regular season, no matter what. Like Reggie Bush's parents getting, money for a house didn't affect his ability to play football. Well, he wouldn't have been eligible. Yeah, but you didn't find out about it till after the fact. He was eligible at that time. So I just think it's dumb. We all watch the games. We know who won those games. So it's like just like bowl bans. Well, what does that do? Let them play in the bowl game. Just don't let them make any money off of it. The only thing they get is whatever the cost to travel to the bowl game is. Because usually when you ban a team from a bowl game, you're punishing a bunch of players who weren't even there when a lot of times when all that stuff went down. So the NCAA's enforcement is for the most part stupid. There's been times when their punishment fit what they needed to do. SMU, it was a renegade program. You needed to do what you needed to do. But then you see like North Carolina's got fake classes, and they don't have to sacrifice wins in basketball when they were running fake classes. And again, fought the NCAA every step of the way. So yeah, it does bother me, Trevor, quite a bit. But the whole notion of vacating wins is also kind of stupid.
I think it is too. I think it's just a silly concept. We watched them happen. I was at some of them. You were at some of them. You know what I mean? I watched Notre Dame beat Oklahoma because the NCAA said, well, that doesn't count as a win anymore. It's like, well, I can still pull up the game and watch it and
Still
see
on
who
YouTube.
won at the end. Yeah.
Right.
Like I still have the Notre Dame 2012 DVD box set of all of their games from that year. I watched all of it happen. I was in person at the Pittsburgh game. So just because the powers that be in the NCAA tell me that the win against Pitt doesn't count doesn't mean I now have it's wiped from my memory and I have no recollection of that game at all. It's just stupid. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I say again, the only wins that you should vacate are wins where you cheated during that actual game. What you did influenced that. Now, and if you knew that a player was ineligible before a game and play him, then I could say, okay, that's different. But Notre Dame didn't find out about the cheating stuff until after games were played, which just makes the whole thing stupid. It really is stupid. It is what it is. Now, just so you guys know, we don't recognize the vacated wins, meaning we don't recognize that they vacated the wins. Whenever we're doing any kind of preview or talking about a rivalry, we tell you what the rivalry is of the games were actually played. And that's true for Notre Dame USC both ways. We count the loss in 2005. You know what I mean? But we also count the wins in 12 and 13. 12 and yeah, they beat USC in 13, didn't they? Yeah, 14-7. Yes,
yeah.
they did. That was the game where Tommy got knocked out and Andrew Hendricks had to come in, and the defense basically dominated the second half. So, yeah. So, we don't discount those, but obviously the NCAA does. All right, some more good questions here. You guys are on fire. Let's get to here's from Eric Koneski.
If you could add one player from any college football roster to Notre Dame's roster, who would it be and why? And you can't pick Jeremiah Smith.
Well, you take the one guy that I would want to add. I mean, I mean, that's the most obvious guy. I can't take him, Trev. Man, I'd have to think about that one for a second. Usually it's a lot easier, but like part of me wants like Colin Simmons, but I'm like, no, I'm kind of fired up about this DN room. It's a good question. Let me think about that one. Do you have anybody kind of off the top of your head, Trev?
No, I'm going through the teams and thinking myself.
Yeah.
I mean, truthfully, all the ones that I'm thinking about are like who I would add as like a key rotation piece guy. If I'm just being 100% honest, like I was thinking like Devin Sanchez is now like the backup boundary corner to Leonard Moore, and they rotate or something. But
I got a good one. Since we can't do Jeremiah Smith, how about this one, Trev? How about Cam Coleman? That'd be one I'd be very, very intrigued by. But like,
yeah, I like
if you think about like next year's mock draft, and you look at like who we're thinking about like for mock drafts next, it's like, okay, who's going to be the number one pick? Is it going to be Dante Moore? Is it going to be Arch Manning? And say, well, it could be CJ Carr. You know what I mean? Like, that would be an interesting one. Caden Green from Missouri is an interesting player, guard. I'm excited about what we're going to get from Sullivan Absher this year, but Caden Green's pretty good. He's pretty good. Those are really the only ones I can think of. Like you could maybe name some D tackles, but I like where Notre Dame is at a D tackle. So yeah, there's not a lot. There's not a lot on the board, Trev. I'm pretty fired up about where this football team is. I've seen a mock draft, Trev, recently that had Notre Dame and obviously Leonard Moore going in the first round, but it also had Kingston going in the first round, but did not have CJ Carr going in the first round, which makes me think they don't think that CJ Carr is going to go pro, which I hope that they're right.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see him back in South Bend for 27. That's for sure.
Actually, you know what? I just read that article, and CJ Carr, they count. Various quarterbacks will be vying for this spot with Lenora Sellers, Drew Mestamaker, CJ Carr, and Trinidad Chambliss amongst that group. It's like, okay.
Interesting group of guys to bunch CJ Carr in there with.
Yeah. And the pick that they had was Mestamaker. Was Darian Mensah. So, yeah, we'll see.
Well, I'll definitely plead the fifth on that take. That's an interesting one to say the least. But in all honesty, this is a difficult question to answer. I mean, we're talking about a team that we've spent weeks, months talking about how loaded this roster is from top to bottom, and we love the depth of talent on this roster. I mean, they're projected to go undefeated, and they have the second best odds to win the national championship on FanDuel. And so it's tough to pick somebody. I have two answers, and one of them is a cheating answer, and the other one's more of a legit answer.
Okay.
Per the wording that you have on here, Eric, you didn't say it was specified to this year. You just said from any college football roster. So I would take Jeremiah Love from the 2025 Notre Dame roster and put him on this one. But
I dig it.
The other one, in all actuality, I would get Josh Burnham back from Indiana. Get him to come back to Notre Dame.
For depth.
Just add him to that DN rotation.
Sean Davis just texted me. He said he'd take Tanook Hines.
Okay.
I like that. I don't know that I'd go with that because I think Tanook is too much like the guys that they have. But I think boundary receiver is where I would go. Cam Coleman would be one for me. But if I could pull rank and say, well, okay, I get your submission, but nothing in parentheses counts in a mailbag question, my answer is Jeremiah Smith. I mean, I think that's the most obvious one, which I like what Eric did because it's like, okay, let's take away the most obvious answer. Because would that not have been your pick if that was an option?
No, it would have been my pick.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely right. Got Bobby S.
If the offensive line is fully healthy, where would the second string rank among Power 4 teams with, I'm assuming left to right here, left tackle Matty Augustine, left guard Sullivan Absher, center Joe Otting, right guard Christopher Tarrick, and right tackle Styles Prescott as the second group?
I mean, that's not a top 15 offensive line. It's not a top. I don't know if it's top 25. I mean, you have Otting and Tarrick are your two most experienced players. There's not a lot of experience in that group. Maybe top 25, maybe. That's a very young, inexperienced offensive line, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I also wouldn't consider like Absher as the second guy again. He's not the placeholder for whenever Charles Jagasaw just comes back healthy. He started 5 regular season games.
He has more career starts than Charles Jagasaw does, and he hasn't missed 2 seasons of practice.
Yeah, so I wouldn't even put Sullivan Absher in that group, and so, but I'm with you. Top 20 would probably be their ceiling today. So that's how I view them. I'm with you.
Here's one. And now Juan apologized in the chat for the negativity of the post, but he did ask this question in a chat the other day, and I figured we'd do him the solid of bringing that up. I didn't want to kick the show off with that, but I did want to eventually get to this one.
What if Notre Dame stumbles in September again? Do we expect Notre Dame to run the table after that gut check?
No, I wouldn't. If Notre Dame stumbles in September again, and I guess it depends on what you mean by stumble. If stumble means like lose a game, okay. Yeah, they'll recover from that. Maybe. But let's not kid ourselves about their recovery the last couple of years. They haven't had to play a team like Miami post-stumble. I think it's debatable if they've even played a team like BYU or SMU post-stumble. I would argue the best team they've beat the last 2 years after a loss was either USC this year or Louisville the year before. I think either one of those teams are as good as Miami or BYU, maybe not even as good as SMU. So that's why. And the early stumble in 24 to Northern Illinois, you can excuse away by they were coming off of the high of beating A&M on the road. What's your excuse for stumbling in September this year? So it would give me serious concerns about it. It would be the hardest finish they would have to have. Are they capable of running the table? Yeah, but I feel like if they lose a game this September, there's a bigger problem.
Yeah, if you lose to a game to one of Wisconsin, Rice, Michigan State, or Purdue, I'm not talking about running the table. I'm not talking about the playoffs. I'm not talking about championship odds. I'm talking about this team taking it week to week, because that is just somewhat of an oversight. Barring just a barrage of unseen injuries in fall camp, I don't see them losing to any of those teams that I mentioned. And I'll take it as far to say I don't see those games being overly close either. If they lose one of those, to Brian's point, who are you overlooking? Are you going to overlook Michigan State because you beat the brakes out of Rice? Are you going to overlook Rice because you beat Wisconsin? You're going to overlook Purdue because you beat Michigan State with a first-year head coach and 30 new players? If that happens, there's bigger issues at hand than will they be able to finish 11-1.
Yep. Trev, at the end of a show, let me see when this was. At the end of the show on March 27th, so it was actually a couple weeks ago, and I completely forgot to bring this up in last week's mailbag. Tyler Evans, I think, joined the show late. So he was still listening when we ended the show, and he put a super chat up. And I meant to bring this up in last week's mailbag, but I completely forgot to bring it up in last week's mailbag. So I apologize for that. But I did want to bring this up. So this is a super chat that Tyler put in at the end of the show that we weren't able to get to. And I wanted to bring this up. It just popped in my head when we did a couple of his questions. So let's do this one real quick, and then we'll get back to the rest of the mailbag.
Well, a belated thank you, Tyler, but appreciate the super chat. What if Jimmy Clausen was the backup to Brady Quinn in the 06 season? What do you think? Jimmy could have learned from Brady.
Leadership. I think that's a big thing. The problem that Jimmy had is Jimmy did not have a mentor at Notre Dame. Jimmy was thrust into a role where he's competing against Evan Sharpley, Demetrius Jones, and Zach Frazier. And none of them had ever played a meaningful down of football. Zach Frazier and Demetrius Jones, I think Zach was still on that team. They were second-year players. Evan Sharpley was a MAC level talent. I mean, and had never played a meaningful down. Even if they had great leadership characteristics, they didn't know what it was like to lead the Notre Dame football program. They had never played. So even the most high character young men ever, they're not going to really be mentors or role models for Jimmy on, hey, here's how you go about your business. Here's how you lead. Here's how you conduct yourself on campus. Here's how you conduct yourself in the community. Here's how you conduct yourself in press conferences. Here's how you break down film. Here's how you study. Now, he had coaches to help with that. But being able to learn those lessons from a peer as well as from the coaches is incredibly invaluable for young players, especially someone like Jimmy, who, Trev, I am not one of those anti-Jimmy Clausen people. I loved Jimmy Clausen as a player. I think he gets such a bad rap from Notre Dame fans, and I understand why. I do. But if you put Jimmy, that's why I wish Jimmy would have come back in 2010, because I think playing on that team even with some bum like Charlie Molnar as a coach, he'd have just kind of ignored him, and just gone out and balled out. But, could you imagine Jimmy being your quarterback in 2010 with all those close losses they had? Man, that'd have been fun to watch. But I think Jimmy needed a mentor. I think Jimmy needed to say, oh, wow, okay, so there's somebody in that room that's also pretty good. I'm not the baddest guy on the block by a mile like he was during his entire Notre Dame tenure. Watching a guy like Brady Quinn do things with the class and leadership and hard work that Brady did would have been an incredibly invaluable lesson for Jimmy and would have made him a much better leader. I don't think Jimmy needed any lessons on how to throw a football. He had one of the, you know what I mean? Like, he had one of the prettiest throws and our balls, and one of the prettiest, his ball placement was unbelievable. He had all the arm talent in the world. Jimmy needed a mentor on what it means to lead, on what it means to prepare and work, on what it means to, be properly engaged with your teammates. That would have been a great lesson for him. And it bums me out that he never got that type of mentorship like CJ Carr got from Riley Leonard and Steve Angeli to a degree. You think of some of the, like Ian Book got, with being on a team with Malik Zaire for a year and Brandon Wimbush and Deshaun Kaiser, even sometimes like what not to do. Those things are invaluable lessons that unfortunately Jimmy never got and needed, in my opinion, needed very much.
Yeah, the reality of the situation, unfortunately for Jimmy, was that basically, and I agree with everything you're saying, all encompassing, it's what does it mean to be the quarterback at Notre Dame? Because that's a different beast than being the quarterback at a different back then Power 5 school.
Mm-hmm.
And the lessons that Riley Leonard was very open about learning about as a senior in college, that Sam Hartman was very open about to discussing going into like his 5th or 6th year of college football, Jimmy Clausen was learning as like a 17, 18-year-old. And that's tough, especially when you're going through your formative years. I'm with you on the leadership. And then practically on the football field, it would have given him that much more time to formulate relationships with guys like David Grimes and John Carlson and George West, who I think was still on that 07 team, and just players like that. So, could it have had an impact on, some players who left a little early? Would Darius Walker have come back in 07? Who knows? So they didn't rely on a stable of freshman running backs. Like it's interesting.
To play with Jimmy, who he would have played with for a year, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
And what would that, and if Jimmy was part of the 06 class, I mean, there a lot of different things could have turned out differently, but that's a great point, Trev. I want to bring up something from kind of a question that's a follow-up to what we just talked about. This is from BVD. BD loves Jesus, loves Angela, loves Notre Dame, loves a lot of things, but not BVG. I love you, Trevor. Not BVG. I'll say BD loves AMD, Angela Marie Driscoll. How about that? We'll go with that one, but not that one. Not that one, Jay Melvin. Brian, why would you take Cam Coleman over Malachi Toney for Notre Dame? Is it just because of the boundary position? I like that Malachi can return kickoffs. That's 100% why. It's about the fit of the receiver room. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that Jordan Faison, Jaden Greathouse, Mylan Graham, Elijah Burris, guys like that are better than Malachi Toney. That they haven't proven to be so. Could they be this year? Yeah, sure. But my point is Notre Dame's already really good there at the positions that Malachi would play. Maybe they're not as good at Malachi, but you're taking a strength and making it stronger. Where with a boundary guy, maybe they end up being good there. And I'm excited about what Micah Gilbert can do and Quincy Porter can do. But with Cam Coleman, you're getting an experienced, proven guy at that position who is even, I would argue even more talented maybe than the guys they have. But and in reality, in real life, I wouldn't take any of them because I want the guys that want to be at Notre Dame. But, I used to answer the question that way. I wouldn't take anybody. I wouldn't take guys to be at Notre Dame. But I feel like that's unfair to the people. So that's why I'm more willing to answer that question than I used to be in the past. It's like, all right, I get it. You want the guys that would want to be at Notre Dame, but like just have some fun with the question. And that's what I've tried to do more of. So that's why I would do it. Like, who would you rather have, Quincy Porter or Cam Coleman? Well, in real life, Quincy Porter, because Quincy wanted to be here. But for the purposes of this question, and when we're having some fun with it, I am still going to pick the guy that is the biggest need. And in the past, we've always been like, give me a D end. But this year, it's like, I don't, nice to have Colin Simmons, but I feel like you're taking a strength and maybe making it even stronger. I wanted to take a position that's a bit of a question mark and turn it into something special. That's what I would do. And that's why I went with that. But yeah, that's why I went with Cam Coleman over Malachi Toney. It's just about Malachi is really good, but they have players at those positions he would play that are also really good. And I don't know that you have the same in the boundary, at least not proven. But, maybe at the end of the year, Micah Gilbert's going to come back or Quincy Porter's going to come back or Cam Williams is going to come back and be like, see, you should have shut your mouth about that whole Cam Coleman thing there, Driscoll. I hope that they do that. That'd be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really just about putting a makeup. Because I'm not someone who's like, just give me the best player available. Well, I want the best player available at a position we actually have a need. Because if I make a strength even stronger, but that weakness is still a weakness, I'm not saying boundaries, I'm just making a point, then you still have that weakness. If I've got something that's already strength, instead of making it even stronger, how about I take a position that's not a strength and make it a strength? And that's why I look at it that way. So very,
100%.
very fair question.
From Pat Kowalewski.
Yeah.
Thank you. Why wouldn't CJ look at the current quarterback draft class for 2027 and come back for another year, be the clear top quarterback in 2028 class with all the talent coming back at the skill for Notre Dame? Well, first of all, there's an opportunity that CJ might be the number one quarterback in the 2027 draft class. It's not a shoo-in that he'll be the top for 2028. We're assuming that guys with eligibility left, guys like Arch and Julian Sane and players like that also leave for the draft in 2027, which there's a possibility. Arch most likely, like Dante Moore's going to be gone. Like there was already a big thing that he elected to come back to Oregon this past year. He's not coming back for the 2027 season, even though I think he's eligible to do so. So I think he's just going to be a redshirt junior this year. I think.
Arch?
Dante.
Dante, yeah, Dante took a red shirt. The year he transferred, he played in I think only 3 or 4 games in the regular season. I'm pretty sure. I'll check on that for sure, Trev, but I think you're correct on that.
Cool. Appreciate you. I mean, it's just nothing says that he can't be the top quarterback in the 2027 draft class. Now, will all things be under evaluation? I'm sure. We all think that CJ is going to have a phenomenal year for a lot of good reason. I agree with you that Notre Dame's going to have a lot of talent coming back, but with the way that they've been recruiting and developing and attracting players in the transfer portal, that's going to be the case even when he has to leave with all the talent coming back. So there's not a world where I think that, 28 would be better because it's going to be CJ Carr and then like Drew Mestamaker and like, Lenore Sellers. And I mean, who says 2028 doesn't have Arch Manning, Julian Sane, and CJ Carr and all those guys, on top of whoever else starts to emerge? Because I'm telling you, there's going to be 2 to 3 quarterbacks that from now to the 2028 NFL draft, there's going to be more quarterbacks that start to break out and gain a lot of notoriety and work their way up mock draft boards. So if it makes sense for him to go in 27, he's going to be a top guy in either draft, in my opinion. That's how I look at this.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Trev. I'll add even more to it. What's to say that the 2028 draft class also won't be loaded? What's to say that Julian, like you said, Julian Sane, I don't think that Julian Sane comes out after this year. I don't think he'll come out. If he does, that means we get a year of Tavian St. Clair, who was an elite, 5-star ranked quarterback. Bryce Underwood will be eligible to come out that year. Keelan Russell, who could be a 2-year starter at Bama, coming out that year. The Sagapatule to Latele kid from Cal will be coming out that year. There's going to be a lot of talented quarterbacks that aren't eligible to come out this year, Trev, that will be coming out that year, not to mention all the guys from CJ's class who come back. And CJ's class was loaded at quarterback. So what if DJ Lagway finally turns into the player everybody thinks he's supposed to be the next couple of years, and he balls out at Baylor for 2 years? You know what I mean? Like, what if Dylan Raiola goes to comes in at Oregon in 2027 and just dominates and becomes the player everybody thought he was going to be coming out of high school? You know what I mean? Like, what if Ethan Grunkmeyers just dominates at Virginia Tech the next couple of years? What about Damon Williams? I mean, I shouldn't say that one because I don't think there's any way he's going to do that. But you get my point, Trev. Like, there's a lot of talented quarterbacks that are going to be coming out the next couple of years. I mean, Sam Levitt technically could be at LSU the next couple of years. What if he is a better quarterback than I think he is? The point is, there's no guarantee that draft class won't be just as loaded as this draft class. And now there's one more year for them to pick CJ Carr's game apart. Like that could be a thing. So, look, if CJ thinks he's going to be a top 5 draft pick and he thinks he's ready, go. If he thinks he's going to be a top 5 draft pick and he doesn't think he's ready, come back. That's what Dante did. It's more so about, are you ready and what's your projection? Because let's say he comes out into a loaded draft class and he gets picked 5th instead of 1st. He's still going to make a ton of money. And, now he gets closer to his draft, his second contract, but if he thinks he's ready, part of the reason Xavier Watts came back in 2024 was he didn't think he was ready yet. So he wasn't as concerned about getting to his second contract because he thought he wanted to prepare himself to be the best player he could be when he actually gets to that point in time. And I think that was smart of Xavier to do that. I think he was much more prepared to thrive as a rookie in the NFL in 2025 than he would have been in 2024, in my opinion. So if CJ makes that evaluation, then come back. But have it more so be about, I don't think my game is completely ready yet, and there's things I want to accomplish at Notre Dame, not, oh, I don't think I'm going to go number one. I think CJ's a smart kid. I think his family are smart people. I think they're mature. They obviously been through this in different ways, obviously coming from, who his grandpa is and things like that. I think CJ is going to look this at a little bit differently than we are. It's just like, will he be number one or the clear-cut number one guy? And here's the other thing. Sometimes, guys, there's value to not being the number one pick. I mean, let's say he comes out and he's the fourth quarterback taken. Let's say Dante goes before him. Let's say that Arch goes before him. I'm trying to think of who even some other quarterbacks would be coming out in that mock draft, Trev, or in that draft in 2027. Be Arch, Dante. Who's another quarterback that might, I don't know, Julian Sayin, Darian Mensah. Let's say Darian Mensah just has like this dominant, like phenomenal season. And I'm actually looking at a mock draft and they've got like Nico Iama, whatever, coming out. That's freaking hilarious. As a number 12 overall draft pick. They got John Mateer, number 11, but no CJ Carr. It's freaking hilarious. Some of these people, like, you do this for a living. But let's just say hypothetically, CJ is the fourth quarterback taken. He's going to get taken by a much better franchise, most likely, than who's going to be picked number one or two. He's going to go to the Jets, the Raiders. Well, they're going to take Mendoza. Like, what crap franchise is always picking in the top 3 or 4 is he going to go play for? Or, yeah, exactly. Or you get picked around 8 or 9, and some good team is now in striking distance, like Pat Mahomes. Best thing to happen to Pat Mahomes was the Bears picking Mitch Trubisky before him and him falling to 10 where the Chiefs could come up and get him. Best thing to ever happen to him, Trev. Chiefs had no chance of getting him in the top 3. None. You fall down. Hey, Pat Mahomes is more than made up that money. You know what I mean, Trev? Like, more than made that up. But he got to play for a legitimate franchise. Sometimes being picked number one it's like with anything else. Is the most important thing maximizing your first contract, or is the most important thing making sure you're maximizing your readiness and going to a program franchise that actually has a track record of success that allows you to become that kind of player?
Yeah.
And I think those are things that I'd be willing to bet you big money that CJ Carr and his family and his reps are going to care more about those two things than just, will I be number one or not? And that's kind of where I'm at.
Getting into the next part of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the Friday free-for-all mailbag going on, and we are rolling right along. You guys are bringing it. Great questions today.
Start off with a recruiting question here, Trev, from Joseph Parr.
With David Davidson committing to Florida, is Notre Dame going to increase their quarterback board, or do they feel good about Upati?
Lapati is looking at he'll probably end up going somewhere else. I don't know that he's made a decision yet, so I don't want to give away his moment, but I don't see that happening. I do have an intel piece about Lapati on the message board, so Joseph, you can check that out. I do believe you are a premium member. But look, right now I think Notre Dame's focus, and I think we had a question about that. I think right now Notre Dame's focus is on Champ Mons, who visits next weekend. We had a question from Bobby S. about that. Where does Notre Dame stand with Champ Mons in his pecking order? If we aren't able to land him, do you have a list of other quarterbacks you think we should go after? So, and then kind of going back to Joseph's question, there are guys that Notre Dame has evaluated that I think that I'm confident they'll turn to. Who those guys will be, I don't, I'm not going to get into that. But I'm confident that Notre Dame has a next in line list of quarterbacks. Will they be able to get those guys? I don't know. They may not get the 3 that they turned to the first time. What's hurting Notre Dame right now is that kids aren't just pretending like Teddy Gerard doesn't exist, and kids aren't just pretending like you didn't pick Teddy Gerard over me. So, like, look at it from Camden Lapati standpoint. Yeah, I love Notre Dame, but you guys thought Teddy Gerard was better than me. That's why you offered him and not me, and took him and not me. Now that he's reclassified, you want me in 2027, which means you want to bring me in, and I'm not as good as the guy that you signed who's going to have a year head start on me. I can't blame a kid for feeling that way. It's not about lack of competition, Trevor. It's about an honest assessment of where do I have the best chance to get an opportunity to play. And so I think they're not back to the drawing board, but there'll be a bit of a restart if they don't think they can get Champ Mons. The other thing they can do is just keep recruiting the kids you like and try to flip them. You know, like, look, kids that commit to Notre Dame, other schools, I'm like, well, these commit to Notre Dame, guess we're going to have to move on. Or do they just keep recruiting those kids? They keep trying to recruit those kids, and Notre Dame should do the same. So expand the board, but don't give up on the kids that you like just because they picked another school. I don't think Davin Davidson is a guy that they'll continue recruiting, but I could see them staying on Camden Lapati. I could see them staying on Champ Mons if they pick other schools. But I think you'll see them expand the board. There's a couple kids out there. We talked about this, the Jake Narok kid from Illinois. I still don't understand why Notre Dame hasn't offered him. That makes there's got to be some story there. But like maybe they tried and he wasn't interested. I don't know what the deal is, but like that's a kid that I'm surprised they didn't go after. Yeah, in this class. But this is a good quarterback class. There's good players out there. But honestly, Trev, for me, I still care more about the 28 quarterback class. The 27 quarterback class, I like the depth. I want the depth. I want a good player. I always want to add good football players. Give me the best possible player you can get at quarterback. But you also have Noah Grubbs and Teddy Gerard in the 26 class, who I think most likely both will redshirt this season. Barring an injury to CJ Carr, they're going to both redshirt this year. I care more about who do you get in the 28 class than I do the 27 class. And it wouldn't completely shock me if at some point in time a 28 kid decided to reclassify. And Notre Dame got on that kid as well. I mean, that's what Champ Mons did. But so I think there's always those possibilities. But I care a lot more about who they get in 28 than I do 27. And if they can, here's where I think Notre Dame would be smart. Instead of just starting over from scratch in 28-7, look at the 28 class and say, let's go get a stud that we love early in 28. Let's go get a Neiman Lawrence. Let's go get a Kingston pre-year if you can get a kid like that early. And let that kid recruit the 27 and 28 receivers. And then you have some time to go find your 27 quarterback. Maybe take a raw kid. Like, this is going to sound stupid, but if Notre Dame got a commitment from like a Neiman Lawrence or a Kingston pre-year or Lucas Prock, like one of the stud 28 quarterbacks, who I would strongly consider going after in the 27 class, Trev? The Drake and Foster kid that you and I saw at camp last summer. The little kid, the 5'11" kid. I know he's not a typical Notre Dame quarterback body size, but that kid's got a freaking cannon. And I'd bet you he'd be a great teammate and a great guy to have on the roster and let him develop and learn and graduate and transfer to somewhere else just for his last couple of years. Like I would seriously look hard at that. Like if you got a 28 kid early, because if you get a 28 stud, the odds of you getting a stud in 27 with Teddy Gerard and Noah Grubbs right in front of him is slim.
Yeah.
It is. So that honestly would be my strategy if I was Notre Dame, is I would really double the efforts on getting one of these stud 28 kids that you've had on campus and then trying to find some good solid teammate, kind of kid. And the Foster kid's like 5'11", $190. But Trev saw this. You and I saw this kid. About the only kid that I thought had a better arm than him last year was Neiman Lawrence, maybe Trayvon Towns. That kid had a great arm. He just 5'11", $180 at the time. You know what I mean? Like, I'd seriously consider that if I got a 28 kid committed and I felt good about his commitment sticking. That's what I would consider doing.
It's not a bad strategy. That kid has an absolute rope.
You saw Trev's face when I brought that kid's name up. It was like, oh, yeah, that kid had a hose.
Yeah.
Absolute hose, man. I wonder what kind of numbers he put up last year. But, man, that kid had I love that kid's. I love that kid's. Yeah, man. He was good.
He can spin it.
I just wish he was bigger. I mean, that's the only problem he has. He's just not a real big guy. But Trev, he had a cannon, dude. He had a cannon. Absolute cannon. So I'm actually trying to find his stats. Yeah, he's listed in this article right here as having like a 5'11", a $180. I mean, that's the drawback. But he can throw the football, dude. He can absolutely throw the football. Really can spin the rock, dude. He's good. He's a good player. Really good player. All right, let's get to some more questions here from y'all. Let's go to Tom Redger with a non-football question.
How do you rank the following drinks? Oh, boy. Diet Pepsi, Diet Coke out of a can, Diet Coke out of a fountain, Diet Coke from McDonald's, Diet Mountain Dew, or Diet Dr. Pepper?
None of the above. I am not a diet drink guy. I don't drink any pop anymore, which is still, Trev, April 10th. I still have not had any pop in 2026. It was a little hard recently because I've just been having some cravings lately that I haven't had in a while, but I've never been a diet drink guy. I don't like the taste. And what's the point of having pop if you don't like the taste? The only reason I like pop is because I love the sweetness of pop. So if I'm going to drink something that's not as sweet, then what's the point? I'd rather have apple juice, So how would I rank them? So I'd go in order. I go bad, worse, even worse, terrible, even terrible. What the heck? That's how I would rank them. What say you, Trev?
I'm a big Diet Coke guy, and I'm not really that picky on where I get it from. I think Diet Coke out of the can is probably my least favorite way to drink it, but I still will. But out of a fountain, I like DC. That's where I am. I prefer regular Pepsi over regular Coke, but I prefer Diet Coke over Diet Pepsi. Some are going to really hate that. Some are going to agree. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm definitely more of a Diet Coke guy. Any form of Mountain Dew, I've just never really been big with it. I'll have it from time to time, but it's okay. And then Diet Dr. Pepper is what my parents drank growing up all the time, and it was fine.
The only pop that I could drink out of a can is Mountain Dew. Everything else, I either have to put it in ice in a cup or fountain. I actually prefer fountain pop better than from a can, especially Coke. I don't like Coke in a can. For whatever reason, that carbonation that comes with the fountain process just makes it better. Here's a funny story for you, Trev. There's a restaurant down the street from our house, Beef O'Brady's, that Ange and I used to go to all the time. And Vince and I would go to when we'd have our staff meetings, because Vince and I live in the same neighborhood. So we'd go to Beef O'Brady's for staff meetings. And I would always ask for Pepsi or for Coke from the bar. And usually they'd listen to me, but sometimes you'd get that server that just was like, whatever, I'm going to get it from back there. And they'd bring it to me and I'd say, I want one from the bar. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And then one time the waitress goes, you've asked for this before. Is it really different? And I said, yeah, it is. She goes, okay, can we have some fun? I mean, because she knew me, she'd had us before and all that. She goes, can I bring you one of each and you have to do a taste test and you got to tell me which one's which? And I said, yeah, I'll do that. So she brings me the two drinks, one from the fountain in the serving area and then one from the bar. And I drank it. I said, that's the one from the bar. And she goes, oh my gosh. She goes, and I'm like, they taste different because I don't know why. Obviously, it's probably how your combination, your mixture, or whatever. But there's just something about a fountain drink from a bar. The one place where I hate though getting it from from a fountain is Five Guys. The way that they Five Guys and Qdoba, they're that weird little hit the button and it's like this weird mix. I do not like those. But yeah, I prefer fountain, or if I'm not drinking it, I got to put it into a bottle with ice. So yeah, weird. I know, very weird.
Fair. From Salty, how far did Quentin Burrell's recent visit to Notre Dame go towards the likelihood of him being Irish?
I don't think Quentin's necessarily quite in decision-making mode yet, Salty, but I think that visit definitely helped. There were some very important questions that he got answered. He got to see firsthand just how aggressive this pass offense is. Because Notre Dame's been telling him, hey, we're going to throw more. We want to throw more. That's always the plan. But schools tell you stuff all the time. I'm still watching you guys dominate with two running backs last year. So being at practice and seeing how much they're throwing the ball down the field and just throwing in general, because one little nugget that I had in my intel piece is Notre Dame's been doing a lot more pass game stuff this spring because of the lack of depth at running back, combined with the fact that they've got like 19 healthy receivers and tight ends. It's like, look, let's just work on the pass game a little bit more. And so that's obviously been a part of it. And as has been reported by others and by us, they've been their pass game is very aggressive. So that's why these receivers are coming to practice and coming away like, okay, I can play in that offense. So I think that helped. And, talking to Sean, because Sean's the one that interviewed him, I think he had some very good, honest, open conversations with players on the team that I think helped that as well. So again, still work to be done, but I think I liked where Notre Dame was before. We feel even better about where they are now, but there's some closing that needs to be done. But it definitely helped. It definitely helped.
Good deal. For my dad Benami, do you think Mike Norvell or Deion Sanders will make it through the season? If so, after it, I believe they have decently hard schedules.
Yeah, I think that I don't know about Florida State. I really don't know if they're Trev, I have no clue what they're going to do, because I don't think their financial situation is any better than it was last year. His buyout gets smaller, but it's not like it's going to go from 70 to 20. Like, I really don't know what they're going to do. And then what do they view as successful? I mean, their first, 7 games, they have to play SMU, at Alabama, home against Virginia, at Louisville, and at Miami. Then you come out of the bye with Clemson at home, at BC, at Pitt, home against NC State, home against Florida. What do you consider successful? Is 5-2 going into your second bye good enough? So let's say they lose at Alabama and they lose at Miami, but you beat SMU at home and you beat Louisville on the road, Virginia at home. Is that good enough? What if you go 4-3, you lose the 3 road games at Bama, at Louisville, at Miami, but you beat a ranked SMU at home? Is that good enough? I don't know. I really don't know. So I can't tell you about Norvell. I don't think they fire Deion in season unless Deion does something to get fired that's not football related. I will say I'm not confident that either of them survives the offseason, though, because I think they're both going to struggle. But with Florida State, Trevor, you just never know. They've got a talented roster, but they had a talented roster last year. It just, has he lost the team or not? That I don't know. This is the make or break season. If he can't recover this year to some degree, like 8-9 wins at least, then I think he's dead man walking.
I think so too. I mean, Florida State has just been a conundrum the last really couple of years, and I've talked about their overall record since 2016, outside of the 23 and I think the 22 and 23 seasons. I mean, it almost looks like on paper they're just a program that just doesn't really care about football. It's just weird watching them go through it. So I would like to say that if he doesn't improve this year, then he's probably gone, but they haven't shown me that they're committed to doing that. And then with Deion, I'm with Brian. Unless he does something illegal or does something that kind of defames the character of himself or the football program, he's going to stay, because he's also made them the most relevant. Now, when I mean relevant, I don't mean competing for a national championship, but I mean like a talked about football program. This is the most publicity Colorado has gotten in the last 20 years. And that includes one of the years where they went 10-4 in the early 20 teens. At the bare minimum, even if he goes something atrocious, 2-10 or 4-8 or something like that, even if he does that, they're going to pay him his respects and let him finish out the year, and then they'll have conversations once the season's over. Super chat from Zach Nichols. Appreciate you, Zach. Love the coach intel on the board. Question, best guess. Is Partridge closer to Al Washington or whatever the D-line version of Harry Hiestand is? Larry Johnson?
Okay, so first of all, I have a different opinion than a lot of other people about Al Washington. And I kind of view it as a little bit of a slap in the face to be like he's the bottom of this conversation and whatever. I think Al Washington was a good football coach. The results the last 2 years show that. The question is not so much, okay, is I just have a hard time with this because I feel like the only way to answer this question is to take a shot at Al Washington. And I don't want to do that because I think Al Washington did a really nice job the last 2 years. So can I rephrase it this way so I can answer it a little bit better this way? Is Charlie Partridge capable of being a D-line version of Harry Hiestand? And we've kind of been asked this question in a different way before, Trevor, but I think he's got a chance to be that if he stays. I mean, that's the thing in coaching nowadays with anybody. You don't know how long a guy is going to be at a place. But my answer is, yeah, I think he can be. He's got a lot to prove. I mean, we've seen him halfway through spring ball. It's a good start, but how does he get his players to play in the fall? That's a big question mark. How does he recruit at Notre Dame? Those are all things we have to learn about Coach Partridge, but just based on what he's done in the past, what he did at Wisconsin, what he did at Pitt, like that to me shows this guy's an elite developer of talent. Can he do that at Notre Dame? We're going to find out, but he certainly has a chance to have an impact with the defensive line at Notre Dame like he had or like Harry Hiestand had with the offensive line. I certainly believe that. And I would argue that Charlie Partridge, for the most part, is walking into an even deeper room than what Harry Hiestand walked into. I mean, Harry Hiestand had two studs in Zach Martin and Chris Watt. Braxton Cave, I think, was never the same after the leg injury he had in 2011. He was still able to play. He was a good player, but I don't think Braxton ever had necessarily the same juice, the same explosiveness in 2012 because he missed. I mean, this is a big kid whose game was about power, and he missed a whole offseason because of a leg injury, which meant no squatting, no cleans, and all of that stuff for a while. You had Mike Golick Jr., who was a gritty, try-hard guy, smart, but look at what Mike Golick Jr. looks like now and what he looked like at Notre Dame. He was never a 300-pounder. He had to pump himself way up to get to 300 pounds. He was not a natural 300-pounder. He's a big guy, but he's got more of the body of an end than he did an offensive line. He just didn't have the athleticism and that's the way to play offensive line. But, like some guys just aren't – and then Christian Lombard was a nice player, but they had just lost Trevor Robinson. They had just lost, Taylor Dever, and Braxton had the injury. Ronnie was a true freshman in 2012. It wasn't until 13 that they really started to load up. That was the Steve Elmer, Mike McGlinchey class. Then the next year in 14, they got Quentin Nelson, Alex Barr, Sam Mustfer. 16 is when they got Icahn. So whereas Charlie Partridge is walking into a room thanks to past recruiting by Al Washington, Chad Bowden, and those guys, and the transfer portal with Boubacar Traore, Bryce Young, Keon Keeley, Rodney Dunham, Ebenezer Tade, Logan Thomas, Dom Hulak, Joe Reef, Tion Gray, Francis Brew, Jason Onye, Chris Burgess, Armel Mookum, Elijah Golden, he's walking into a very talented room. And it's like, okay, get the most out of that room. And there's a lot of work to be done for a lot of different reasons. So I think he can have an impact. And I just don't feel comfortable answering the question in a way where it's like you're somehow making Al Washington like the bottom feeder of the question. And I just think he did a good job at Notre Dame last 2 years. I mean, think about it. They whooped Georgia's butt. Think about this. The Notre Dame defensive line whooped Georgia in the playoffs last year with these players. R.J. Oben, undrafted free agent. Junior Tuihalamaka, probably an undrafted free agent. Gabriel Rubio, maybe a day 3 pick. Donovan Heinisch, retired from football. Probably wasn't going to get drafted because of the injuries and his lack of size. Josh Burnham, good talent, but hadn't really taken off the way he did this past season. And a Howard Cross, who was a 7th-round draft pick. That's the unit they dominated Georgia with. No Boubacar, no Botelho, no Riley Mills, no Keon Keeley, no Tion Gray, no Francis Brew. You know what I mean? You don't do that in spite of coaching. And I'm not saying Zach's saying he sucked, but you got to be a pretty darn good football coach to get that group up. This year's defensive line led the nation in pressures among the defensive line, according to PFF. You don't do that if you're not coached well. The question now is, can he take it to the next level where this group is elite? That's the question. And like Ed Warner was a good football coach. Harry Heastand was an elite football coach. And I think that's kind of where we're at. It's not like Ed Warner replaced John Latina or Jeff Quinn or something like that, right? Like, I mean, Harry Heastand and Charlie Partridge is replacing a good defensive line coach. But I just think he could potentially be on an even different level. So I get uncomfortable answering the question that way. And again, Zach may not have meant it that way, but like, I just think that Al Washington did a lot better job maybe than a portion of the fan base gives him credit for. Maybe Zach's not one of those people, and I'm just reading into that, my sensitivity to that feeling a little bit. And if so, I apologize. But I think Al Washington did a very good job. The expectation, however, is you need to do an elite job, and that's what they're trying to get to, and hopefully Charlie Partridge can be that guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I echo a lot of the same things that you do. I hesitate to answer this question in the way that you formatted it as well, just because you speak it into existence. We fast forward 2 years and Partridge is like a great borderline elite D-line coach, but then we're having that conversation like, but he's not Harry Heastand, and who else is out there? What happens next? It's like, does he have the chops to do it? I think so. Does he have the track record to back it up? I think so. But there's a ways to go. We're 8 practices now into the spring. I don't know if I'm ready to say he's closer to Harry Heastand yet, because to Brian's point, there's a lot we have to see yet. But does he have the potential? Sure. But it's kind of like when we talk about recruits. You know, we see somebody's like 2026 or 2025 film, and it's, hey, this guy's really impressive. It's like, cool. Can he be the next CJ Carr? It's like, maybe. He has some of the tools to be that potentially, but some of it's pumping the brakes a little bit until we get into mid-season form. Let's wait till he gets a recruiting cycle under his belt, because a lot goes into being Harry Heastand or the D-line equivalent of that than just sounding really good in practice, which he has been so far. So he's off to a heck of a start, but I hesitate to say, yep, he's gonna be. And I know neither of us are saying that. But he could. From Brandon Gilbert, if for some reason you had to follow another program, which one would you pick and why?
Oh, man. Probably would have become a Florida State fan. Let's say that Notre Dame stopped playing football in 1987. I really liked Bobby Bowden as a kid. I liked Florida State's baseball team. I thought Florida State had sweet hats. I had a Florida State hat when I was a kid. I'm always someone who had a lot of hats. I was very much I have hats that look sweet, that match gear. That's kind of from like 10, 11, 12 years old. I was always that way. Y'all know I love wearing hats. But probably Florida State. That would have been a team that I liked a lot, because like they threw the ball more back then. You know, they had Deion Sanders, and then Charlie Ward came along and was a lot of fun to watch. So I probably would have picked Florida State if Notre Dame wasn't an option. It would have had to take that. It would have had to take Notre Dame not being an option, though, because like I said, my dad is a Notre Dame fan, and it's just kind of what I was raised on. But let's say, like I said, Notre Dame stops playing football in 1987. Probably Florida State would have been who I would have turned to. Now, I might have stopped being a fan at some point in time because of some of the drama, but I always liked Bobby Bowden a lot, and his teams are fun to watch.
Yeah, I've gone on record to say this before, but mine's LSU. It would be. I mean, first of all, in the job that we have now, there'd be a lot to, I feel like, talk about in the off season. It's not that there isn't with Notre Dame, but just feels like a program that's always been moving. But in my formative years, they've had a lot of really fun players too. I mean, my formative years of being a college football fan, they've had the Honey Badger, they had like OBJ and Jarvis Landry. I talk all the time about that 2019 LSU team, like Leonard Fournette, Jadarius Geis, like all those guys. They've just kind of been a fun team that I've watched, and that's probably the team that it would be for me.
No bias here from Insured by Big with his response. I've always said Trev's a genius. No bias whatsoever there, Big. None at all. None whatsoever. I upset Daily. Our daily comments. Our resident Miami fan is not happy with me right now. But yeah, that's a good one. Well played, guys. But sorry, just got to be honest. Got to be honest.
From DJ, would you rather have one or two offensive linemen that can do everything, or every player hone the craft at a specific position?
Well, I mean, you'd prefer both, but I think that the number one objective is getting guys to hone their craft at a specific position first. Then you branch out and have them be able to do multiple things. But I think ideally, DJ, you want to be able to do both. But if I could only pick one of these two things, I would rather them hone their craft at a specific position. Would be my number one objective.
Agreed. From Ballpeen Shillelagh, what position group in college football generally has the largest rotation depth, and what is the logical maximum rotation for an elite roster? How deep could Notre Dame's rotation be at this position?
I think it's wide receiver. I think the fact that you've got so many athletes that can play wide receiver, you have so many wide receiver friendly systems in college football now. 7-on-7, like just that's such a prominent thing now. I just think if you can't put a good receiving core together as a top program, you just don't know how to recruit and evaluate and teach. I think that's the place where it's probably easiest to get a large rotation. I really do. And it's a position that young guys can play. I think the only other one I would look at is maybe running back, but I think that can be a harder position to really build great depth. What Notre Dame has done is very unique. It's very hard to get a talented back to be 4th or 5th on the depth chart and then stay the next year the way that Notre Dame was able to do last year, just because you can only put one guy in the field at a time. And so I think that'd be a little bit tougher, but I think wide receiver, and Notre Dame is incredibly deep at wide receiver. Now it's not a ton of proven depth, but just God-given talent and different skill sets. I think Notre Dame's receiver room is loaded. Now they just got to go show it, go prove it this year, but it's very, very talented.
Receivers in that conversation for me, I'd also say defensive line. I think that's another position where, especially now more recently in football, you're starting to see teams go deeper into their bag, especially over the course of these elongated seasons. Like Notre Dame, for example, is very far away from just their defensive line being Victor Abiamiri, Trevor Laws, Derek Landry, and Chris Fromm. And those are just the 4 guys that are on the field for almost every defensive snap. I mean, now with the expanded playoffs and certain teams playing for conference championships, we've watched Oklahoma go into a deeper defensive line rotation the last 2 seasons. And honestly, probably going to be a third one in a row here. Notre Dame has rotated their defensive line very well. So that'd probably be the position group that I would go with, along with wide receiver. And how deep could it be this year? Exceptionally deep. I mean, you could have 4 to 5 defensive ends play this year, and that's still with a couple of guys, not very talented players, not seeing meaningful minutes. Same thing with the interior. You could go 5 to 6 deep there with, again, 1 or 2 guys, very talented guys, just not seeing very meaningful minutes. So it's D-line would probably be that one for me, Ballpeen, but it's close. For Brandon Gilbert, who has the most approved this season, USC or the SEC?
That's a good question. I think it's USC. Look, I get that the SEC has been down, but I don't think they have to prove anything, because I think people still assume things about the SEC that they don't even deserve based on the last couple seasons. But it's also not like the SEC's been garbage. Like, it's been a good league. It's just not the league that it used to be. USC's been down for a while. And you've got a coach that came there thinking he's in the playoffs every year at Oklahoma. I'm going there so I can win a championship, AKA I don't want to play in the SEC. So I think USC has more to prove this season. Absolutely. I mean, we're not that far removed from the SEC winning 4 straight national championships. Like, we act like that was like a decade ago. Like, we're 3 years removed from them winning 4 straight titles, right? So, yeah, it's nice the Big Ten won 3, but 19, 20, 21, and 22 were all, SEC championships. And with all due respect, most of those games weren't close. You know what I mean, Trev? Like, the title games have been a lot more competitive in the ones the Big Ten won than the beatdown that LSU put on Ohio State or Clemson, the beatdown that Alabama put on Ohio State, the beatdown that Georgia put on TCU, and then the beatdown that actually it's the other way around. It's the only competitive game during that time was when an SEC team beat another SEC team.
Yeah.
When Georgia beat Alabama, right? And then 22 was the year that it was a 60-something to 7 game against TCU. So, let's not write the obituary for the SEC just yet. Yes, they've been down. Yes, they didn't deserve top 5 teams in the playoffs last year. Yes, they're still getting too much hype. But they're one good season away from being right back there. Let's not act like they're done forever. Good coaches will adapt to the modern reality. The SEC has hired better coaches the last couple years. Let's not write the obit for the SEC now. I'd rather say enjoy it while it lasts if you're an SEC hater, because they'll be back again. And then guess what? After they could become back again, Trev, they'll go through another stretch down the road where they're not as good. That's life. That's how sports works. But yes, enjoy them not being as good as they used to be now, because they'll get back to where they're winning championships again. I don't think they're ever going to have a stretch. I think it's going to be tough for the SEC in the modern landscape to do what they did from 04 to 2022. I mean, think about it. They won a title in, actually, was it 03 or 04 that LSU won the title in 2003, right?
Yeah, because USC won it in 04.
Right.
Texas was 05.
Okay. So LSU, I always forget that because LSU and USC kind of split it in 03. But LSU wins it in 03. Florida wins it in 06. Florida wins it in 08. Bama in 09. Bama in 11. Bama in 12. Bama in 15. Bama in 17. LSU in 19. Bama in 20. Georgia in 21. Georgia in 2022. They dominated the sport for almost 20 years. There were some teams mixed in, but it was like LSU, I forgot LSU in 07. I forgot about the second LSU title in 07. So, they've had stretches like the Big Ten is having now, plus some. They won every title from 06, 07, 08, and 09, and then 11 and 12. So, 6 out of 7 years. So, I don't know that we'll see that level of dominance by one league for 2 decades the way that we saw. And, but there will be a time when the SEC will be back on top again. I just think it'll be a little bit more competitive next time because of the new rules.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's USC as well. FanDuel thinks the exact same thing. I mean, look, when you go and you look at just the odds to make the playoffs, which is something that has also just been released, there are 14 teams ahead of USC expected to make the playoffs. 7 of them are from the SEC. Mm-hmm. And that's just expecting to make the playoffs. That's not winning a national championship. That's not making the college football playoff semifinals. That is just to get into the field of play. USC is closer to Penn State, Tennessee, and Florida than they are Georgia and Texas. I mean, that's just kind of where they're at, unfortunately. I mean, shoot, to win a national championship, where is USC? I'm looking right now. USC has the same odds to win the national championship this year as Tennessee, and they have closer odds to winning the national championship to Florida than they do of Miami, Georgia, Indiana, Oregon. So it's definitely USC. This is very much, betting talk aside, this is very much a prove it year for them, because the SEC doesn't have to prove if they're not lukewarm. They just have to prove that they can make it out of or play for a national title. Because not even just winning one, they haven't played for one in 3 years. Yeah. USC hasn't made the playoffs since the playoff era started. I mean, and I'm talking the 4 team even. So USC has much more to prove. I'm with you.
See, we need to, what we need to do more, Trev? We need to more not properly understand people's questions when they do super chats. So then they have to follow up with a super chat explaining their question, which is what Zach Nichols has done. I'm kind of kidding, Zach. Thank you for this. Zach with a super chat. He says, it didn't mean my question is a slight to Al Washington. More trying to know where Partridge is as a coach, not just an ND. If Al Washington is a floor, that's a really high floor. So I appreciate that follow-up, Zach, and this makes a lot more sense. So, if you're okay, Al Washington's the floor, which is pretty good, but we can all agree he wasn't necessarily elite like Harry Hiestand, then where is Charlie Partridge in that floor, in that range? That I feel more comfortable answering. And I would say right now, Charlie Partridge is kind of right in between those, leaning a little bit more towards Harry Hiestand based on what he's done in the past. at Wisconsin and at Pitt. Like we talked about this, Trev. There was a stretch at Pitt where they were in the top 3 in tackles and loss and sacks for like 3 out of 4 years with not a lot of high recruits. And I think only one really high draft pick, and that was the kid from a couple of years ago, the short, real big D tackle they had a couple of years ago. So I would say he's in between those two, in a little bit trending more to Coach Easton than he would be Coach Washington. But if you're saying like Al Washington's the floor and that's really good, but Harry Easton's like that legendary status type of thing, I'd say he's in between those two. I think you got to do it at a place like Notre Dame. And this is where I'm going. You got to do it at a place like Notre Dame to truly become that legendary status, right? Like Joe Moore was a great coach at Pitt before he was a great coach at Notre Dame, right? But if he'd only ever coached at Pitt, would there be an award named after him? I don't think so. I think the fact that he also did it at Notre Dame is a big factor in that. So I think that matters a lot to me, Trev, when I think about just that level of success, because again, he was at Pitt from 1977 till 1985. Remember, Pitt had some elite teams during that stretch. He had some big, Jimbo Covert, some big time offensive linemen that went to the NFL. But again, I think that being at Notre Dame and doing it at Notre Dame just took it to a whole new level of reputation for him. And that's why I think Coach Partridge needs to do it at a place like Notre Dame to really get over the hump. Like if Jim Tressel would have stayed at Youngstown State, he'd have probably won a couple more national titles, which means he'd have a bunch of national titles. But would anyone really, outside of like the football junkies, have a clue who Jim Tressel was? Would he be lieutenant governor in the state of Ohio, right? Which is what he is right now. If he would have just stayed at Youngstown. I mean, Trev, he won 4 national titles at Youngstown State. 2 years before he left for Ohio State, they were playing in the national championship game. If he doesn't go to Ohio State and win 1 title, and that's all he wanted at Ohio State was 1, he's not the coach that he is, reputation-wise. He's still the coach that he is. He just reputation-wise, perception-wise. So that's why I think Coach Partridge needs to do it at a place like Notre Dame to be on that status. But he's been outstanding at his previous stops.
Yeah.
Good question. Thank you for that, Zach.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Appreciate you. Who had a harder time elevating their program or sustaining, Jimmy Clausen or Matt Barkley, in your opinion?
Jimmy.
Yeah.
I mean, USC was still decent during Matt Barkley's tenure. They weren't what they were, but they were decent. I mean, unfortunately for Jimmy, he took over for the most popular Notre Dame quarterback of the last 30 years. Because again, Tony Rice falls outside of that period. But I mean, USC still had a couple good years under Matt Barkley. I mean, he had some 10-win seasons. You know what I mean? Like in 2009 under Matt Barkley, they were 9-4. The next year they were 8-5, but then they jumped up to 10-2. And Jimmy never had that. Jimmy was 6-6 every year, 6-6 or 7-6 every year, and then 3-9 the other. So definitely Jimmy, but neither. It's not his. To me, if you'd have put Jimmy Clausen at USC, they would have been much better with him at quarterback in 2009 than they were with Matt Barkley at quarterback, with all due respect. I don't put that on Jimmy. I think that if you looked at like USC in 2007 and 2008 and 2009, if Jimmy Clausen was at USC and instead of, John David Booty and Mark Sanchez, USC would have been a lot better than they were, with all due respect. Jimmy Clausen was a better quarterback than both of those guys. Just he unfortunately was timing sucked for him.
Yeah, the biggest difference, the receiving cores during that time for Jimmy Clausen and Matt Barkley at their respective times at their schools were, you could call it a wash. I mean, if you wanted to argue that, I'd still take Notre Dame and Golden Tate and Michael Floyd and them, but at best for a USC fan, you could call it a wash. The biggest difference was trench play and defense. Matt Barkley had defenses that Jimmy Clausen just never had during his time. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Trench play and defense was just the biggest separating factor for those two guys. I mean, Jimmy Clausen would go out and throw for 300-400 yards a game and they'd lose. Like, that's just – I mean, the offense would go out and put up 41 points and they'd lose, you know?
And he had Joe McKnight at running back those 2 years. I mean, it just the team. Trev, I don't even think it's a wash. I think even USC fans would say it's not a wash. I mean, the starting receivers in 2008 for USC were nice players: Damian Williams, Patrick Turner, and Ronald Johnson. I don't even think a USC fan would argue that they were better than Golden Tate, Michael Floyd, and Kyle Rudolph at tight end. Same thing in 2009. You know, in 2009, you look at their top receivers in 2009. You had Damian Williams, who's a good football player. Remember, transferred from Arkansas, came with Mitch Mustaine. You know, your number 2 leading receiver was Anthony McCoy and Ronald Johnson, Bryce Butler. Like, I don't even think USC would people say, that's every bit as good as Michael Floyd and Golden Tate. You know what I mean? They wouldn't say that.
Oh, sure.
But to your point, after that, big drop off. Running back, with all due respect to Armando and Robert Hughes, they were not Joe McKnight. The offensive lines were way better. The defense was way better. And honestly, the coaching was better. You know, I mean, so yeah, it's unfortunate, but I'm glad Jimmy came to Notre Dame. But honestly, his career would look a lot different if he would have gone to USC, in my opinion.
Yeah. From UT Irish, our guy Drew Rainey, appreciate the super chat. In your opinions, is Notre Dame better off committing to a 3-4 defense this season, or would sticking with a more traditional 4-3 put their best players in position to succeed? Why not the 3-4?
Well, I don't think they should do either of those things. I think they should stay the 4-2-5 team that they are. And the reason I would not go to the 3-4 is because I understand where you're coming from, right, with the talent at linebacker and all that, but I don't know that Notre Dame's linebackers would be great in a 3-4. And if you went to a 3-4, you'd have Boubacar as one of your 4. I mean, he would be your outside linebacker to the boundary. So your personnel would be no different. I do think there's some merit, Drew, to having some odd fronts this year. I think there's some merit to, in certain situations, like certain nickel situations, which we've seen, going to like an odd front, like a 3-3 stack type of thing in certain looks. But, 3-4, I just don't want 7 bigs in the field very often. There are some teams that'll be necessary, like a Stanford. We've seen Notre Dame go to 4-3 in recent years, like when teams go 12 personnel, Notre Dame matches with 4-3. They've had 4-4 personnel in the field the last couple of years, starting against Navy and Army. So there's some merit for it, but I just don't think the 3-4 and the traditional 4-3 has the same value it did when those defenses were dominant, because of just how much teams spread the field and the number of athletes that teams put on the field. So if you're in a 3-4 defense, you're going to have a sub package for when teams go 11 personnel. Well, guess what? You're going to spend most of the game in your sub package, the way that teams line up now. So what a 4-2-5 allows you to do is the 4-2-5 allows you to be every bit as good against the run as you can be against the pass when teams are in some of those spread sets. That's what it is. And if a team wants to put a second back on the field or a second tight end on the field, then you can sub out and put in your 4-3 package. But I think 4-2-5 is still the best look. I don't know that Notre Dame's personnel would thrive as much in a 3-4 up front. Potentially, I could see some merit to Keon playing some 3-down defensive line. Bryce Young, I think, could be a good 3-4 end. Jason Onye could maybe be a good, he could do what Cap did in 2012. So I think there's some merit to it. I just don't think they're as built for it as they are for the 4-2-5. That's why. I don't think it gives them a whole lot of advantages here. I will say this: if Notre Dame if this roster was in 2012, I would actually like this front 7 better than the 2012 front 7, because I think they'd have I like Boubacar more than Darius Fleming and more than Prince Shimbo.
Yeah,
your 3-down, that'd be close, but you had Lewis Nix would be better than Tion Gray, but your second and your third, I think, would be deeper. You had Capron, Lewis Moore, Stephon Tuitt. I don't think the guys now are quite as good as them, but your second group would be better, way better. And you'd still be good with Bryce Young and Jason Onye and Tion Gray and and Francis Brew and Chris Burgess would be a monster as a 3-4 defense. You know, where that team was like your backups were like the late Kona Schwenke, Tony Springman, and a true freshman Sheldon Day. But at linebacker, you had Manti, who was a star. But, you know, so is Drake Bond Manti? No. But I'll take Jaden Ausberry, Kingston. I mean, Kingston would probably be what Kerry Neal was, and he'd be a freak doing what Kerry Neal did. And you'd have Drake, Kingston, you'd have Drake, Madden, Jaden Ausberry, and then Kingston could also play inside when you do go to your sub package. I mean, as a whole, I like this personnel better. It's just that doesn't work anymore. That's why Bob Davies not a D coordinator anymore, because that's all he knew. He couldn't adjust to the modern offenses as a coordinator. He ran what he knew his whole football career, which what he played at Iowa and all that other kind of stuff. And that defense just doesn't work anymore against modern offenses. It just doesn't. And that's why I think the 4-2-5 is so effective, especially if you got a pretty good run defender at the 2. But the way teams use safeties now, it's a different animal. It's a very different animal. I mean, like Zeke Mata in today's era would not be a safety. He'd be a linebacker.
Agreed, 100%. I'm sticking with the 4-2-5. I think for all the reasons that you listed off, that's the most opportune lineup to get everybody in their best position, especially with the type of offenses that they go against now. I'm with you completely. Mm-hmm. Getting into the next part of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the Friday free-for-all mailbag going on. Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker, is getting us kicked off here. Who is your dream Notre Dame broadcast team for home, away, or championship game?
Oh, well, Mike Tirico's my play-by-play guy. Like that's an easy one for me. Who would my color commentator be? That's a good question. I don't know, Trev, that there's like a color guy that I absolutely am in love with. Oh, he's so good. I mean, it's going to sound crazy, but I'd bring back Mike Tirico, Mike Mayock. That was my favorite Notre Dame broadcast team. I liked listening to those two guys. Man, I just don't know who a good play-by-play, or I mean, a good analyst would be, Trev. Like, who's a good analyst in college football right now? I mean, Joel Klatt's solid, but I wouldn't like pine for Joel Klatt. I mean, if I had to take a current team, I'd take Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt. I know I'm in the minority amongst this chat because we've had this conversation before. I love listening to Gus Johnson do any team but Ohio State. He's exhausting doing an Ohio State game. It's exhausting listening to him do an Ohio State game. But in every other game, I love listening to Gus. I think he's fun. He makes games fun, you know, and Joel Klatt's a really good color guy. I don't love him but I think he's good, but he's not like, oh, I got to have Joel Klatt. But that's probably the best pair. You know who I would have? I'm going to go Notre Dame. I'm going to go Mike Tirico and Aaron Taylor. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a Notre Dame flavor to it. I'm going to have because I think Aaron does a really nice job on the CBS broadcasts. He does. He does a really nice job. So I'll probably go those two. That's what I would do.
Yeah, for sure. For Notre Dame home games, I'd go Mike Tirico on the play-by-play. I mean, he was phenomenal. Had the best "Here Comes the Irish" out of any commentator that I've heard cover Notre Dame games.
Can I say one thing about Mike Tirico real quick? You know what I loved about Mike Tirico? NBC has we're not a Notre Dame homer broadcast. And I thought Mike Tirico did a good job of not being a homer, but you could tell he called good Notre Dame players differently than plays, and he called good plays by the opponent. There was a genuine excitement in his voice when Notre Dame would do something well without being a homer. I thought he was so good at accomplishing what NBC wanted, but also appeasing the Notre Dame fan base by very clearly making it obvious that we're a Notre Dame broadcast. He was absolutely the best at that. He mastered that, in my opinion, Trev. And that's what I thought made him so good, on top of him just being a very good play-by-play guy anyway. But that's what made him so good at Notre Dame. Like, he was brilliant at that. But anyway, please continue through your list. I just felt like I wanted to say that about Mike Tirico.
No, I'm with you, man. I agree wholeheartedly. For Notre Dame home games, I would ask Mike Tirico to do the play-by-play, and I would ask Ryan Harris to come over from the radio booth and be the color commentator. next to Mike Tirico, just for a full-on Notre Dame bias. Because if you listen to the radio call, that guy gets absolutely juiced whenever anything positive happens for Notre Dame. Away games, I would probably go. I really like Brad Nessler. I do. I like him on the call. Good. He has a good voice for it. And then I guess if I'm taking them as a pairing, just Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson, like I don't love him calling like Notre Dame games or like as a color guy, but I think as a duo, those two in the booth I like. So I guess them. And then for the national championship game, anybody but Chris Fowler.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's where I'm at.
There's two no's for me. I can't have Chris Fowler. I can't have Jack Collinsworth. Anyone else I'd be fine with.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'd still rather Mike Tirico call that game. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Somebody said McElroy. I do think McElroy's a good color guy. I think he's a very good color guy. I'm still pissed, however, about his whole the guy just fell down from the Penn State game. Yeah. That bothered me. That's the only even the tight end thing with Jaden Thomas was annoying in 2022, but it's like, dude, Jaden Thomas, I'm fine. It's whatever. It is what it is. But that Jaden Greathouse, the guy just falls down as Jaden Greathouse is juking him out of his jock strap. That still bothers me. It did. But outside of that, I think he's a good color guy as well. He does a really nice job. And he's done a lot of good Notre Dame games. He does. He does.
Agreed.
Yeah. Sean, I used to really like Sean McDonough. He's kind of annoyed me lately with some of his, like, you can tell, like, he's not a fan of Notre Dame. Like, and I don't mean like a fan, but like he seems to have some kind of like weird, I don't like Notre Dame. But his call of the Mitch Trubisky, him losing his voice, calling the Mitch Jeter field goal against Penn State was a pretty iconic moment.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that was pretty
cool.
That was pretty cool.
That became my new favorite call of his. Before it was the muff punt by Michigan State. That call was electric. I've memorized every word of that, and I text it to my buddy who's a Michigan fan every single time they play Michigan State.
That's great.
Just because I don't like Michigan.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, my favorite Keith Jackson moment is I enjoyed Keith Jackson doing games, but it was very clear he wasn't a Notre Dame fan. But I remember 1988, Trev, he spent like 5 minutes complaining about how Tony Rice stepped out of the end zone on a deep pass to Rocket Ismail and should have been safety. Even though I think it was Pat Hayden, I think it was like, no, that's not the back line, but Keith would not let it go. He would not let it go that he didn't step on the back line. Because like the way it was, Trev, like they had their like painting, and then there was like this 3-yard gap or a couple yard gap of like green, and then the back line. So because there was like that difference in the end zone between like the color and then the green, he thought when Tony stepped on the end of like the logo thing that was the back line, and he just wouldn't let it go. And Tony threw a bomb to Rocket Ismail for a big play. He would not let it go for like it seemed like 5 minutes. He just kept talking. And I'm like, Keith, we're all watching the replay, and he clearly is several yards from the back line, but he would not let it go. That was a hilarious Keith game. But I always enjoyed Keith Jackson. I just remember a lot of like Ohio State and Michigan games growing up as a kid, Keith Jackson calling those games as well. So, yeah. A lot of people don't like Brent Musburger. I always liked Brent Musburger.
Oh, I liked him.
Yeah.
I liked him. I mean, he had one of my favorite Notre Dame calls. He was on the call Notre Dame Oklahoma in 2012, and after Theo Riddick punched in like the exclamation touchdown, he was like, "Folks, let me say this loud and clear: Notre Dame is relevant again." Yeah. Like that's hype. That alone made me like him.
He had some great Brady Quinn calls in the second half of that Michigan State game in 2006 as well.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he Samarja, he does the way he said Samar, I liked Brent. I did. I mean, I still do. He's still alive, but like he obviously doesn't do games.
I know what you mean.
But I enjoyed Brent when I was a kid. Yeah. Yep.
I get you. For Mark on the radio, what freshman has the best chance to make an impact?
Let's give one each side of the ball, and I'm going to stick to guys that are on campus right now. I think offensively right now I'd go Bubba Frazier. We'll see how Ian Premer does when he shows up this summer. Defensively, the freshman with the best chance right now, I'll go Rodney Dunham. But Joey O'Brien is charging hard. But I'll go Rodney Dunham. Be my two, Trev. Same for you?
Yep, same for me. Yes, sir. From Brandon Gilbert, if you got to suit up for the Irish for one game, who would be the opponent? Can be anybody. And what position would you play? What would be your jersey number?
That's easy. USC quarterback number 7. That's the position I played, and that was my favorite jersey number. So last time I put a football uniform on, I wore number 7. That would be what I would wear, and I'd be a quarterback, and it'd be against USC.
Love it.
If I could play one game, and it would be at home because I'd want to run out through the tunnel. That would be it.
Yep. Home game for me. I'd wear jersey number 5 because that was my jersey back in the day. Loved Manti Te'o. And the second he had his 2012 season, I switched my jersey number.
What?
7.
Nice. Smart man.
Yep. I was 7 because I loved Jimmy Clausen and I was a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And then I watched Manti Te'o do his thing in 2012. And I was like, yeah, 5 is a pretty dope number. So then I switched it to 5.
Sweet. And it didn't hurt either that Everett looked pretty good running around in number 5 as well.
Yeah. So. Yeah. In a world I thought I looked like him. I didn't. But in the face, I definitely look more like Manti Te'o than Everett Golden wearing number 5. But no, I'm with you.
No comment. I don't want to get me too'd. I'm not commenting on that one.
All of that worked out well for me. I just ended up looking like Justin Yoon. I didn't look like Manti or Everett. But I switched my number to 5. And then what game? I mean, if
Justin
it could be
Yoon
any
is
game,
the toughest kicker that Notre Dame has ever had, in my opinion. It's the only hockey player that Notre Dame ever had as a kicker.
He is. He was a dude.
Didn't look like him, but he was a tough kid.
In any game this season, I mean, I'd probably go the Miami game because I think that could get super heated and be really fun. Yeah.
I would not want to suit up for any games this season because the idea of playing college football at my age and in my shape is like that's a death sentence. So I would say hard pass. But in my prime, USC at home, quarterback number 7. I dig it.
In my prime, it'd be Rice at home because that's probably when I'd get on the field.
Well, I don't know, man. They've had some beatdowns at USC in the past few years. You know what I mean?
That's fair. That's very fair.
Yeah.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Appreciate you, man. Trev, pick your top 5 LSU all-time wide receivers. BD, pick your top 5 Florida State all-time and who wins.
Oh, gosh. I mean, honestly, probably LSU, first of all. I mean, LSU's receivers all-time are freaking ridiculous. They've had, like, I'll let Trev pick the 5, but, like, the 07 receiving core was ridiculous. Like, Dwayne Bowe in that group, and then the 19 LSU receiving core, and then the 23 receiving. Like, they've had some crazy ones. My favorite Florida State receiver was Peter Warrick. Like, him and Charles Woodson kind of did something, like, when they played that I mimicked when I played, and that was the wristbands over the elbows. And then Peter Warrick would wear his gloves unattached. And I did that once in practice just for fun and loved it. And I started doing that when I played receiver because, as you know, Trev, I have some weird personality quirks. And one of them is, like, I don't wear my wedding ring. I don't wear chains. I don't wear a watch. I don't like tight things being around me. I just have this weird thing. I don't like it. Like, when I went at surgery, they'd take my blood pressure, and I hate it when they get that thing super tight. I'm like, y'all better let this thing go or somebody's getting punched. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like feeling really constricted. I don't like wearing tight pants and all. Like, I couldn't be, like, modern gear would not be my thing with young people feeling like us wear tight pants and stuff. So when I did that, it was comfortable for me because I didn't love the thing that you had to do. And I felt that I could still catch the ball the same. So I kind of mimicked that a little bit, but I loved Peter Warrick in high school and college. He was so good. Some of my other favorite, I have to think through. E.G. Green was a guy that I really liked at Florida State. He was fun to watch. Kes McCorvey was a really good player. I'd have to think about sort of some of my other favorite players. But who are the 5 best? Top 5? Who was the kid? Was it Kelvin Benjamin that was their top receiver in 2013. Was he was on that
Yeah.
2013 team, right?
Yeah.
He'd probably have to be on there for me. But Peter Warrick's the top. Rashad Green was a really good player, but yeah, Kelvin Benjamin I thought was an absolute monster. I'm gonna look this up real quick because I'm trying to think of some of those guys, just because I'm telling you my favorites. I don't know that I would necessarily go with the all-time best. Peter Warrick's on there for me. E.G. Green would be on there for me. Kes McCorvey would be on there for me. Just trying to go through, think of some other guys. Anquan Bolden might be. I mean, he statistically wasn't there, but man, Anquan was a beast. And then I'd probably go Rashad Green. Looking at his numbers, I'd go Rashad Green. He's their all-time leader in catches and yards, and he's tied for second in touchdowns behind Peter Warrick. So that'd be my 5. So Peter Warrick, Rashad Green, E.G. Green, Anquan Bolden. Who did I say my 5th was? Kes McCorvey. Kes McCorvey. Problem with Kelvin Benjamin is he was only great for like that 1 year.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be my 5. That'd be my 5.
Yeah, my 5 all time at LSU would be Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Odell Beckham, Malik Neighbors, and then probably Dwayne Bowe.
Dwayne Bowe's so freaking good, man.
Yeah.
Think about some of the guys you're leaving off that list, though. That's the whole point about. I mean, you're leaving off Brian Thomas just recently. Like
Brian Thomas, Jarvis Landry.
Yes. I mean, dude, you're leaving off some flipping.
Kayshawn Boutte, who when he was at LSU was a dude. Kyron Lacey was recently a dude.
Early on in his career, yeah. I mean, Brandon LaFell, Early Doucette. I mean, you're leaving off some dudes from those teams, man. Like Craig Davis, that's another one. I'm just looking at like past guys that they had. Like they're some dudes. They had some absolute dudes.
Yeah, man. Super chat from UT Irish. Our guy Drew Rainey. Appreciate you. Buy one, hold one, sell one. Jeremiah Love, Reggie Bush, Marshall Faulk.
I mean, as a Notre Dame fan, I'm buying Jeremiah Love. I'm holding Marshall Faulk, and I'm selling Reggie Bush. But they were all phenomenal players. I in good conscience could not pick Jeremiah Love just as a Notre Dame fan. But I'm buying the idea that Jeremiah Love is the best of the most recently. I'm holding on to the hope that one of these days we're going to rewatch the 05 game and Reggie doesn't dominate in that game and win that game. And I'm going to sell the idea that Marshall Faulk wasn't the best player in college football his last year at San Diego State, because he was. So freaking Gino Toretta won the Heisman Trophy over Marshall Faulk and Garrison Hurst. That you can talk about some of the dumbest Heisman Trophy votes. Obviously, there was a lot back then. Ty Detmer winning it over Rocket 2 years before. Gino Toretta getting it over Marshall Faulk, convincingly over Marshall Faulk and Garrison Hurst. It was stupid. Absolutely stupid. Yeah, there was a lot of dumb voting back then. A lot of dumb voting.
And unfortunately, for a lot of people who love running backs and want to see a running back win the Heisman Trophy, our friends over at FanDuel do not see it happening this year. Either, obviously, all subject to change, but the closest running back to win the Heisman Trophy, and I am still scrolling.
Still scrolling.
I am still scrolling. It would be
Ahmed Hardy or Kewan Lacey, right?
Unfortunately, no.
There's a running back ahead of them?
Yes, and it is Bo Jackson at Ohio State. Is the first running back that I see listed. He has the same odds to win the Heisman as Nico Keelan Russell, who hasn't won the job yet. C.J. Bailey at NC State, Noah Fafita, and Dylan Raiola, who is a backup.
Okay.
So, to each their own.
Whatevs. Whatevs. If you say so. No love for the running backs. I'm blaming Trev for that one. I don't know whose fault it actually is, but I'm going to just go and blame him because I'm shooting the messenger this time.
That's
so
fair.
Just like your whole Rocky Top thing that's still freaking in my head this whole flipping show. I've had Rocky Top ringing in my freaking brain. Thanks a lot for that. Or T-Dog.
You're welcome. You're welcome, brother. I got you always. From Salty, with 27 transfers and a plethora of ex-Penn State players, Franklin is hitting the ground running at Virginia Tech. With Clemson, SMU, and Miami road games, will Virginia Tech win 7 games?
I think so. Trev, we haven't done our predictions for the season, and yeah, they have some tough games, but I actually think the fact that they play those 3 teams on the road is good, because I don't think they beat those teams anywhere they play them. I don't think they beat SMU, Miami, or Clemson this year, no matter where they play. And I've always said this: if you're not going to beat a team, and your odds of beating a team are slim, play them on the road. That means you get somebody you're more beatable at home. VMI at home, Old Dominion at home, Pitt at home, Georgia Tech at home, Stanford at home, Virginia at home, all winnable games. And then road games at Maryland, winnable. Road game at BC, winnable. Road game at Cal, winnable. So yeah, I think that right now, just off the top of my head, I'd say, yeah, they win 7 games. And I'm talking regular season, but he's not going to turn this thing around completely in 1 year. But I think they'll be a much better team this season.
Yeah, I even think the FanDuel line is 6.5. That's the proper one to set it at. But I'm with you. Are they going to be contending for the ACC title this year? I'm not going to put any money on that. But yeah, I think the 7-game mark is a good measuring stick for where they're going to be at the first year of James Franklin. From John A1, if Charles Jagasaw and Ashton Craig return healthy in fall camp, can it create disruptive movement along the line in fall camp? Is this the make it or break it year for Rudolph?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the Notre Dame offensive line will create movement just with the guys that they have out there right now. I mean, even before Ashton Craig and Charles Jagasaw come back, if we're talking about run game blocking movement, if we're talking about movement of players when they come around, because there's 2 ways that could be, then no, they won't create any movement other than them inserting into a spot and somebody else moving out. So Ashton Craig comes back, he goes to center, you move Joe Otting out. Charles Jagasaw comes back, it's one of your starting 5, he just moves Sullivan Absher out at right guard. There's no other movement around that. They're not going to put him at tackle and all these other kind of things. I was having a debate with a buddy of mine the other day, and he's like, yeah, I think when Jagasaw comes back, I think they're going to put him in over Will Black. And I was like, if Will Black's struggling, maybe. I was like, but obviously Joe Rudolph thinks that Anthony Knapp's a better option at left tackle than Charles Jagasaw, because they moved Charles Jagasaw to right guard last spring and kept Anthony Knapp at left tackle. So clearly that's kind of how he felt about the situation. So either way we're talking about, I think they create movement in the run game. Now, I think the line they could have now is going to create movement. But let's be honest, right? A healthy Charles Jagasaw and a healthy Ashton Craig makes this line next level.
Yeah,
I can say that. I'm just not counting I'm not counting on Jagasaw being that guy, because it's not just that he hasn't played the last 2 years. He has barely practiced the last 2 years. He had spring ball and basically the last month of the 2024 season. That's all he's even practiced. Not like sat out like Will Black last year, just didn't play all year, but still practiced all but 2 weeks when he was out with a concussion. He hasn't even practiced the last 2 years. He's still not practicing. So I'm just not getting my hopes up that he's going to play. But if he does, yeah, he changes things a little bit. I mean, he'd be in a 2-man duo where he's not the biggest guy on the right side of the line. Yeah, that's going to create some movement. You know what I mean? But Sullivan Absher's not exactly small either. So that's what I'm saying. Like, they should be loaded. And even if Jagasaw doesn't come back, this line should be really good. And I do believe it's a make or break year for Joe Rudolph. Absolutely do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll start back to front. Do I think this is a make or break year? I think this will be the year that tells us if Joe Rudolph is an elite offensive line coach or just a good offensive line coach.
Yep.
The make or break thing, that's up to the guy who runs the program. And I don't know if it's just a good offensive line. I don't know what decision will be made at the end of the season. They don't pay me that kind of money. With Charles Jagasaw, I echo everything that you said. I mean, Notre Dame just put out a video of like mispronunciations of like names or last names. And unfortunately, he was still in a sling. That poor kid's been in a sling now for the last year.
Yeah. Now, and that's because he just had another surgery, which
Yeah.
Marcus Freeman talked about. But that's Trevor's point. It's like that's just kind of been this was his 5th surgery on that elbow. 5th.
Yeah.
So now not all of it was structural repair, but most of it was. One of them was just cleaning out infection. But 4 of the 5 were like 3 of the 5 were structural. One was to like clean out the surgery. One was like kind of a post-op procedure. And then the other one was like cleaning out the infection. But like 3 of those 5 have been hardware, as Marcus Freeman kept saying it. That's not a good sign. It's not a good sign. All right, here we go. Here's one from Dirtbag Jake.
Who on
Jake,
offense or defense?
You got to change your picture, Dirtbag Jake, because we're calling you Dirtbag when there's an adorable little kid in your avatar, and you make it very conflicting for us to call you Dirtbag when there's an adorable kid holding a play like a champion flag in your avatar. So we got to do something about that. Got to do something about that.
Agreed. Agreed completely. From Jake, from Moneybag Jake. There you go. I changed your name for you. Who on offense or defense has the biggest mouth and is always chirping from what you've seen? Oh,
offensively, it's one of 3 guys. It's either CJ Carr, Jordan Faison, or in the past, Jaden Greathouse. Yeah. He hasn't done a lot of chirping this year. On defense, it's a Don Schuler and probably Drake Bowen. Jason Onye likes to run his mouth too.
Yeah.
When in practice. Those would be my 3 on both sides of the ball from what I've seen so far.
Agreed. Do you know who I could see getting after it on the interior of the offensive line? Maybe he's in his show buddy about it. I could see Anthony Knapp John a little bit, but like it's more like under the breath. You know what I mean? But I could see that. But yes, we have the same guys.
All right, let's get another one from Dirtbag Jake.
Are there ever times a recruit is in love with Notre Dame but ends up picking a different school they don't like as much because the road to playing time is much easier?
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, if Camden Lapati doesn't pick Notre Dame, I think he's picking a school he doesn't love as much as Notre Dame. But you also have to make the best decision for your future. And sometimes you love Notre Dame all you want, but that's not necessarily best for your future if your desire is to be a starter and go play in professional football. So, yeah, it happens frequently.
Yeah.
And not just to Notre Dame. It happens to a lot of people.
From John A1, last season, I thought 50% of the blame was on the offensive line, 15% on fumbles, 25% on play calling, 10% on having a first-year quarterback. How do y'all see it?
I see the play calling, if we're talking offense, I see the play calling number being much lower for me. I'd say I'd probably put – oh, man. I'd probably – I mean, I hate to say it, but I'd probably put – I'd say instead of play calling, I'd say maybe 15% play calling, 10% play calling. I'd say 15% run game design. That would be more of what I would focus on.
Yeah. I'm with that. I think play calling is a little bit too high at 25%. I would also have a lack of a wide receiver rotation in there, and you could paint that however you want to say it, like whether that's injury or lack of player development or whatever you want to put in there. But
let's go personnel decisions, because that I think you could also put in there who's playing where on the offensive line, who, not getting certain guys ready to help you, things like that. I'd say personnel decisions. Yeah, I like that one too, Trev.
From BD loves Angela Driscoll. Brian, you've mentioned a couple times that you think the past few years have been down years in college football. Why is that? And when has the last time we've had a season like the upcoming one where it's loaded?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll answer the first part. I think part of that is because you've had some bad coaches at good programs. I think that's fair to say. Billy Napier at Florida and, what's his face? Hugh Freeze at Auburn, Mike Norvell at Florida State. You've just had some programs that are notoriously Sharon Moore at Michigan. You've had some very good programs that have had bad leadership. And I think another reason why is quarterback play.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been the same level of elite quarterback play that I expect this year. There just isn't. Like, we've seen quarterback years where quarterbacks get drafted high, but that's more because they're overdrafted. When we talk about projecting a bunch of top 5 quarterbacks next year, it's because they're top 5 quarterbacks. Like they have that kind of talent. So I think that's part of it. I think actually those are my 2 biggest reasons why. And then the third reason why is we just suddenly were thrust into this weird transfer portal era, and teams are just kind of learning how to live in this universe. How do you keep your roster together? How do you build a roster? How do you bring in 40 new players and build cohesion? And some teams have had trouble with that from a year-to-year basis. I think all those things factor into why the last few years of college football have been down. Too many average to bad coaches at really good programs. And, you could throw Lincoln Riley in at USC. I think you could, look at line play has not been great the last couple of years on either side of the ball. Quarterback play has not been as dynamic top to bottom as I think it will be in the way that it is. I mean, think about this. Think about the playoffs in 18 and 19. Think about the 4 semifinal teams. You had Trevor Lawrence. You had number 1 overall pick, Tua Tagovailoa in 2018. He was number 5 overall. You had Kyler Murray, number 1 overall pick, and then Ian Book, who was not like the others. The next year, Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall pick. Justin Fields was number 2 or number 3 overall. You had Jalen Hurts, who was a 2nd-round pick who has since won a Super Bowl, and then Joe Burrow, who was a number 1 overall pick. Compare that to the year Ohio State won it. Will Howard, what was he, a 5th-round pick? Riley Leonard, 7th-round pick. Drew Aller, probably a day 2 or day 3 pick this year. And Quinn Ewers, who I think was a 7th-round draft pick. And not just draft picks, but they were good college football players. Riley Leonard was exactly who Notre Dame needed in 2024. Guys, he was not Kyler Murray. He was not Joe Burrow. He was not Trevor Lawrence. He was not Tua Tagovailoa. Let's just be real about that. I think, this year, Trinidad Chambliss is a great story. You have Fernando Mendoza. You have Dante Moore, maybe, but I think Dante needs a little bit more seasoning. He's not in that level with those guys yet. He could maybe be that. And then Carson Beck. And then you compare that with, again, the guys we saw in the past in those championship moments. So I think those are big reasons why. Not as great coaching, not as good quarterback play, and a lot of teams scrambling on how to properly build and run a program in a new world where rosters are being built completely differently than the way they used to be, and the adjustment that just some programs had to make. And now everybody's kind of found their sweet spot. Your strategy may not work, but a lot more teams have an idea of how to live in this world than what we saw in the past couple of years. I think all those things factor into it for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's really fair. I mean, the last time, and I echo everything that you said, when is the last time that we've had a season like this upcoming? I'll tell you, the last time I felt like it could have been one of those was 2023. I thought going into 2023, it was going to be a loaded year of college football. I mean, you had Jaden Daniels going into his 2nd year at LSU. Out on the West Coast, you still had Michael Penix and Bo Nix. Bo Nix was going into his 2nd year at Oregon. You had Quinn Ewers at Texas. Still had Nick Saban at Alabama. Michigan was another prime team. Florida State was looking like they were going to be really good. Notre Dame just got Sam Hartman. I'm a big believer that when certain teams in college are good, the product overall is better. And that's a lot of the teams that I just named off: Notre Dame, Florida State, Michigan, Alabama, Texas. I think when those teams are good, I think college football, the overall product is better. And the outlook for those teams was looking really good going into 2023. So that's probably the last time I felt like this. It's this year is about to be insane in college football. And some of it was, so that's But was Georgia going to be able to repeat? Carson Beck was taking over. Stetson Bennett was now gone, but they still had a lot of talent. So it was the year was setting up to be a good year of ball.
Yep. I thought I'd probably go back to 19.
Yeah.
Because for those who haven't watched the show for a while, I was actually really high on LSU that year. I predicted LSU to be a playoff team that year because I loved the receiver talent. I liked Joe Burrow a lot. I did not see coming what we saw coming. I did not see Joe Burrow being a historic quarterback. I thought like that guy's going to be a really good quarterback. When I found out they were hired Joe Brady and what they were going to build with Joe Brady, I thought that team had a chance to be really good. And was a playoff team. I didn't have them winning at all, but you looked at that team. You had Clemson coming. Was bringing Trevor Lawrence back. Ohio State with Justin Fields. Georgia was supposed to be really good that year with Jake Fromm going into year 4. I thought Notre Dame was going to be a really good team that year. You had Jalen Hurts transferring to Oklahoma. Like I thought that year of was going to be a really good year for college football, and I actually think it was. It just LSU became such a juggernaut that it was like it masked like there's some good teams that year, like really good teams that year. That Ohio State team in 19 was really good. That Clemson team in 19 was really good. That Oklahoma team in 19 was not as good as they had been, but it was still a good football team. But there were some disappointing teams that year too. Notre Dame was a disappointing team in 2019, in my opinion. Very disappointing team in 2019. Alabama was an interesting team in 2019. I don't think they were quite as good. Their defense had taken a big step back. So 19 is the last time I kind of felt this good about where college football was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good questions. All right, let's get to one from here's one from Salty.
Which team will win the Red River Shootout, Texas or Oklahoma?
I have Texas.
Yep, as do I. As do I. I think this year will definitely be a little bit more high scoring than the one from last year. Last year was like 16-9 or something weird.
Yeah, ended up 23-6, but that's because they had, I think, a pick six or a punt return late. I think it was a punt return late in the game that that broke it open. But it was like 16-6 until that. It was an ugly game. Yeah, it was an ugly game. It was not a fun game. And in the last couple of years, the games have been a little bit ugly. You had Texas blew them out in 2024. It was a good game in 23, but then Texas won 49-0 in 2022. 2021 was a shootout, but it was like an ugly shootout. It was like bad defense. You guys just running down the field uncovered. It was like this isn't even good football. This is like Baylor TCU or Baylor West Virginia. Where just like, yeah, the offense is entertaining, but like they sucked. Yeah, like you know what I mean? Like
Agreed.
It was not. So yeah. I do think that if Oklahoma wins it, I won't be surprised, Trev. I just think right now I think Texas is the better team. But our whole point we're saying here is this could be the most competitive game, so I could see it going back and forth. But look, we did our roster rankings the other day, and we both had Texas higher than Oklahoma. But we also both had Oklahoma in the top 10, which means on a neutral field, anything could happen. In a rivalry game, anything obviously could happen.
100%.
Yeah.
From John A1, if Mike Brown or Jamarcus Shepard were the Notre Dame wide receiver coach from 21 to 24, do you think Lorenzo Styles would have been Notre Dame's go-to wide receiver from 22 to 24?
No. I think look, I like Lorenzo. I like his family. I think the things that kept Lorenzo Styles from being a great player were Lorenzo Styles. So, no. No, he didn't get coached well, but no. I don't think so.
Yeah.
He had the talent.
I'm with you.
But, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's other names that I think I would put in that category as like the go-to guy if those two were the receivers coaches above Lorenzo Styles. I'm with you. Getting into the final part of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the Friday free-for-all mailbag going on. We have Juan Delgado getting us kicked off here. Question with Leonard Moore and CJ talking about the Miami game last year and looking forward to when they play in November. Do you think if we lose that game, it will mentally hurt the team more than usual?
Yes, I do. I think so. I don't really know why you're like so pessimistic with all your questions. But it's okay to like be excited about this team. But this is a fair comment and a fair question. Your first question was, does Notre Dame recover if they lose early in the season? And now it's like, if they lose to Miami, like, bro, like, it's okay to be excited about the season. If you can't be happy now in freaking April, I don't know when you're going to be happy. But to respect your question, because it's a very fair question. Yeah, I think it's a lot like all the 20 Ohio State game in 2022. They put all that effort into that game. And I think it took that team several weeks to recover from that loss. I do. I really do. Just like I think the team struggled against Purdue to play the way they're capable of because they were reeling from the loss to Texas A&M. So now they just out-talented Purdue and won the game. But I absolutely think that that's very, very fair. I just think – I don't know that Notre Dame is going to be as focused and obsessed on Miami as that we're being led to believe. Those were questions that they were asked about Miami. We don't hear them talk about Miami unprompted. We only hear them talk about Miami when they're asked questions about that game and that matchup. Like I'd be willing to bet you $20 that Heather Dinich didn't ask a vague question and then CJ Carr starts talking about Miami. That would be my guess.
It's also Marcus Freeman's comments during that interview session that make me feel better, because he even went out and said, like, we can't just bet everything on Miami because then we're going to end up dropping another game because we're not focused on the task at hand and we're not being present in the moment. So, yeah, that's to answer your question, Juan, I think it'll hurt them. Do I think they drop another game after that? I don't know, but they won't look like the team that we know that they could down the stretch against, SMU or Syracuse to wrap up their season, stuff like that. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yep.
From Riley Erdman, I live near Lubbock, Texas. Everyone here that is a Texas Tech fan thinks they could beat Notre Dame. Me personally, I think it would look a lot like the Notre Dame versus Pitt game. Thoughts?
I think you're spot on. I think Texas Tech fans are very delusional. I think that they're actually finally good at football. They're beating up a very mediocre league, and they think they're hot stuff. And I would just like to point out that the college football team that Trevor and I played on last year scored as many points in the playoffs as the one that Texas Tech had last year. So, like, it's a cool story, but you guys are quickly ruining the whole we like the upstart program thing by acting like complete douchebags.
Yeah.
Like Joey McGuire, I don't know what your obsession is with Notre Dame, but shut up, dude. You know what I mean? Like, work on getting a field goal in the playoff game first. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, maybe try to score a point against a team outside of your league that's decent, and then we can talk about whether or not you should be running your mouth about Notre Dame. Mind your dang business and focus on your team. Like it's odd behavior. It's a very odd behavior. And so it's like, in this fan base that wants to talk all this trash to Notre Dame, who are you? Like, I put a response, a quote tweet out to Joey McGuire's latest Notre Dame comments with that Conor McGregor thing. Like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, who are you? You're nobody. Enjoy your moment. Become the fun, likable fan base. You're not Indiana. They can run their mouths and act like they can beat people. You can't. So, like, enjoy this, right? Like, enjoy your moment. Enjoy beating up on the Big 12. But shut up when it comes to Notre Dame, unlike the other big boys. When you score a point against a team with a pulse outside your league, then you can at least have an opinion that anybody cares about. But until then, like, shut it. They're like, Trev, like, like you're a teenager and like your parents had like that kid late, that unexpected child, and like you're 18 and he's 5 and he wants to run his mouth. And so you just kind of put your hand on his forehead whenever he gets mad and you're just like, okay, keep wailing. Now go back to your room and I'll talk, you know what I mean? Like, that's who Texas Tech is right now. Kurt Cignetti's not that. Like, they prove they're a big dog. They belong on this stage. And even though Kurt Cignetti lost his first playoff game, they competed. They didn't like shrivel up in that game. And I would argue they played a better football team than what you played last year in Oregon. So I just like sit down, mind your business, and understand that like you may be the head of the kiddie table right now, but you're still at the kiddie table. And you don't get to run with the big dogs just yet. And you definitely don't get to take shots at the big dogs just yet. And that's what Texas Tech is going through. It's like they would be a much more likable story if their fan base wasn't so ignorant, and if their head coach would like act like he's actually done something. Bro, James Blanchard is why your program's good, not you. You've even admitted that he basically goes out and gets you your roster. So shut it. And just enjoy this little flash in the pan thing that you're going through right now and try to be the likable upstart. Because I would love to root for Texas Tech. Like, I think it's a great story. But they make themselves very unlikable real fast.
Yeah, Riley, you could go out to Lubbock, Texas. You could go out to Provo, Utah. You could go down to Phoenix. Yeah, there's a lot of fan bases that think that they could beat Notre Dame. Look, I like the underdog story, not as much as some other people, but you can't be good for 1 year since Michael Crabtree was there and then now think that you're just the dominant power in the country. Be lucky that you faced Oregon and they only beat you 23-0, because if Notre Dame would have made the playoffs and you would have had to play Notre Dame, I promise you that score would have been worse than 23-0, and your fan would have went home very upset.
Yep.
Like, let's not act like you are now just the – I mean, are you the class of the Big 12?
Sure.
Sure, I guess. I mean – I don't know what all that's really saying. No disrespect to the rest of the teams in the Big 12.
Play well that game. They didn't even play well that game.
No,
like
they
the
got
last
beat.
2 times that Oregon has played a Power 4 team in the playoff, they got destroyed both times. Not beat, destroyed. Indiana beat them 56-22, and Ohio State beat them 41-21, and it wasn't that close. They blanked y'all. Like, blanked y'all. So.
Yeah. With Dante Moore having more interceptions than touchdowns, they put up 23 on you.
They didn't even play well and blanked you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, oh, man, if this play goes better, if that play goes better. It wasn't even that, Trev. They just flat out got worked. I mean, just flat out got 200 and, I mean, come on, dude. Like, you guys, I can't stand people that get a little bit of something and they want to act like they've accomplished like this wonderful thing. You know what I mean? That'd be like me talking every day, talking trash to Archer. Like, man, y'all some bums. Like, hey, bro, didn't we beat you last year? Like, it doesn't matter, man. But represent Notre Dame. Ohio State sucks. It's like, well, Ohio State hasn't beaten Notre Dame since my grandmother, or Notre Dame hasn't beaten Ohio State since my grandmother was 3. You know what I mean? So, like, that's the equivalent of that. And you know what? Notre Dame beat Ohio State more recently than Texas Tech has been relevant in football. Yeah, and that's 1935. So sit down, shut up, and actually do something that's worthy of us talking about before you run your mouths like you've done something. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm sorry. I'm laughing at Archer.
Yeah, I see him in there. He's trying to go at you.
Yeah,
this will get me in a better mood. Riley Erdman, so you can tell all those Texas Tech fans, enjoy being the head of the kiddie table, but just remind them that they're still at the kiddie table.
Yeah, 100%. From Brandon Gilbert, cookies, crunchy, soft, or a blend of both, and then donuts, glazed, or something stupid.
Okay. So Brandon, it depends on the cookie. Like, and it depends on like how it's made. Like, I actually like crunchy and soft cookies. It just depends on who makes them. Like, if I'm gonna buy like cookies if I'm gonna buy like cookies from like the store, I like the soft batch from Toll House, but I also love the famous Amos cookies, which are harder. It just depends on the type. They're both good. Oatmeal raisin cookies need to be soft. That's my only definitive. It has to be. I do not like a hard oatmeal raisin cookie. Like, that's the only requirement I had for cookies. For donuts, if it's just a plain donut, it's got to be glazed. But if it's going to be chocolate covered, I don't like chocolate covered with glaze. I just like Rise and Roll is the best, Trev, because like they've got the glazed donuts, but on their chocolate covered donuts, it's not glazed because that's just too much sugar for me. But if we're just talking plain donuts, Brandon, it's a no-brainer. It's literally glazed because anything else is just stupid. If you have just a plain donut without glaze, it's just like, I don't know what the point of this is. Personally.
How you feel about oatmeal raisin cookies is how I feel about snickerdoodles. They got to be warm and soft.
Yeah.
Like that is a non-negotiable for me. If you hand me a stiff snickerdoodle cookie, I'm just not going to eat it. I will respectfully
right back, like, nope.
I'll put it on a plate.
Texas Tech fans.
Yeah. I'll respectfully put it on a plate and do like the Midwestern, like flip it over in the trash can so nobody sees what I don't eat. It'll be one of those. But cookies, I like it with like when the outside of the cookie has a little bit of a crunch to it, but the inside's soft. And then donuts, I mean, look at how I'm built. This wasn't made by salad. Okay. Like I glazed donut, something stupid donut. Like, dude, I'll just eat them. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Still best if you're from the South Bend area or you're visiting and you've never had Rise and Roll donuts, you've got to try them. They've moved their store in South Bend and areas moved. They're now on 23, where the behind that house that used to be a candy store.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Where the Gigi's Cupcakes used to be, where Seminini Grill used to be, they're now there. So they're not over in Mishawaka anymore. But you got to have the Rise and Roll donuts. They're tremendous, and they're made fresh every day. They're so good. I like the glazed. I love their glazed. Glazed donuts are good, but their cinnamon ones are very good also. But I love their chocolate covered donut, like their chocolate frosted donuts are my favorite.
Yep. Love those. When Lauren and I, when we first moved to downtown Indianapolis, because we used to live outside of 465, the apartment complex we moved to in like downtown, there was a Rise and Roll on the first floor. So on our way to work every single day, we would stop and we'd get a donut. And then they moved, and then I got very, very upset. Very, very sad. I would have too. They're actually now closer to my house than they were before. So for me, it's worked out very well. Chris Black Irish says, Brian, your mother makes really good cookies. I've punished a tray of them at a tailgate last season. Yes, she does. Yes. My mom makes everything good, though. And I'm not just biased. Everyone that's ever been to a tailgate will tell you the same exact thing. I've told my mom, I wish she would have opened up like a candy shop. Because she sends every Christmas, makes a bunch of candy for her clients. So my parents are process servers. They run a process serving business. And my mom would they have like hundreds of clients, and my mom would make like candies every year from Buckeyes and peanut brittle and like chocolate covered pretzel, all this kind of stuff, fudge, all that. And she would send that out, but like she makes great stuff, but she makes everything good. Even things that I don't necessarily like, I'll eat if my mom makes it. So like, I don't like potato salad. If my mom or my grandma make it, I'll eat it. I don't love deviled eggs all the time, but if my mom makes them, I'm definitely eating them, that kind of thing. So yeah, she can get after it, which everyone that's ever been to an IB tailgate knows. Yeah, she's the real deal. Yep. Although there was something you ate at a tailgate that I made, Trevor, that you liked, that you found out after the fact that I made, chili. Mm-hmm. From Salty, the ACC had the most chaotic process to produce its conference champion last season. Which conference will be the most chaotic this season? The G5 rep. Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of chaos in the G5. And there kind of was last year too, Trev. I mean, if it wasn't for the stupidity of the ACC, I think the chaos this year will be teams knocking each other off.
more so than some stupid tiebreaker that the ACC had. I don't see that. I think the ACC and the Big 12 are both going to have a dominant team this year. So the Big 12 last year had a dominant team. If one of the two is not, I think the Big 12 will be the one that's a little bit more chaotic. If it's a Power 4 team, I think that one will be a little bit more chaotic as far as a champion. And I don't know that the SEC can be chaotic because it really doesn't matter who wins the SEC or loses the SEC, because the winner and loser are both going to get in. And the third team is going to get in. I think it matters a little bit more in the because there was a little bit of like a tiebreaker-ish stuff with the SEC last year. Nobody cared because it was like, well, they're all going to get in. So they never talked about it. But there was tiebreakers that had to go into last year too.
Yep.
But I think it'll be the Mountain West, Pac-12, AAC, like all that stuff will be more chaotic than what will the Power 4 be. But if I'm wrong, I think it'll be the Big 12. Just because I don't think Texas Tech is going to be quite as good as they were last year. They're still going to be the best team in the Big 12, and I just think a couple Big 12 teams are going to be a little bit better this year. I think Utah's still going to be good. I think TCU is still going to be good. I think that K-State's going to be improved this year. I think Kansas is going to be good again this year, especially with Andy Kotelnicki coming back. I think Arizona State's going to be a good football team again this year. Arizona's going to be a good football team again this year. I just think the Big 12 is going to be a fun league to watch. I think that Texas Tech is still significantly better than everybody else, but maybe not quite as significantly as last year. But yeah,
I'm with you. Yeah, I think G5 is going to be crazy this year in a good way, like crazy entertaining.
Yep. It's going to be fun. It's whole season, man. I'm excited about.
Same, bro. From Bobby S., do you see a bunch of recruits committing prior to official visits, or do you think we will have to wait until official visit season to start landing a bunch?
I think they'll land several players between now and official visit season. I don't know if it's going to be as many last year. For several reasons that we won't get into here, but they'll get some guys between now and official visit season. Certainly.
Yeah. From John A1, looking at past Notre Dame players who had slower than a mid 4.5 40 speed, who would be in your top 5 players who you'd give the ability to run 0.15 seconds faster?
Oh, that's a good one. Tony Jones Jr. is the first running back that comes to mind. If Tony Jones Jr. ran like a 4.5 flat instead of what he had, I think he'd have been a beast. I think he would have. Maybe Audric would be another one that kind of pops in my head, and then Darius Walker. That's the other one. I just thought of going back to my childhood. The running back that I'm putting numero uno on my list, Lee Becton. If Lee Becton was 0.15 faster than what he was, that's my top of the list guy. So I'm going to go Lee Becton 1, Tony Jones Jr. 2, Darius Walker 3, Audric Estime 4. That would be my running back list, just as far as looking at that position. Trev, anybody pop in your head? I'm gonna think of a couple receivers here. I think Malcolm Johnson is one that pops in my head as a wide receiver. Like he'd have been one.
We share a couple. I'm with you on Tony Jones and Darius Walker. I would also add, and he was still a very productive player during his time at Notre Dame. I put Kyron Williams in that. I think if he doesn't run the 40 time he did, he's not a 5th round draft pick.
Yeah,
I mean,
and he would have been even more dynamic at Notre Dame, especially in 2020 with that offensive line. Like that would be ridiculous.
I'd give him a little bit faster of a time. I would have given Michael Mayer a little bit faster of a time because I think he would have been regarded to more closer to Brock Bowers than like that disparaging gap where some people compared them that way.
Yep. Corey Mays is a linebacker that pops in my head.
That's good.
If Corey had like 0.15 faster in the 40, I think Corey Mays would have been a beast. And he was already pretty good. We've talked about this. They're not the greatest linebacker duo, but both of one of our favorite linebacker duos was that 05 duo of Brandon Hoyt and Corey Mays. I think that's a good one for me. I like that one. Just thinking through a couple other guys. Here's a guy, DJ Brown.
Yeah, that's good.
If DJ Brown was 0.15 faster, I think DJ was a really smart football player. Knew where he needed to be, but he just was a 0.15, maybe 0.35 too slow to really be the difference maker. But he was a good football player. I've said this a million times, Trev. If DJ Brown had Ramon Henderson's athleticism, he'd have been a much different player at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Worker, smart, did what you need him to do, just didn't have the athleticism to be that guy. That's another one. Yeah, I like that one. Could you imagine what Cam Hart would have done in the draft if he was 0.15 faster, if he ran a 4.35 with his film and his size? That's another one. He was still a great player, but like draft-wise, it would have been a very different story.
Yep. I'd give Alohi Gilman an extra 0.15 seconds off too. He ran like a 4.6. Getting him down into
Jalen Elliott ran a 4.8.
Yeah.
Like, think of the damage he did as a 4.8. I still think he's faster than that, but still. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Jimmy Clausen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. That was a good one.
Get him down into the 4s. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's one we haven't had yet.
From Yeezy Exposed, post Sam Hartman and early 2024 Riley Leonard. How do you guys think Marcus Freeman has progressed in the aspect of letting his quarterback in Denbrock play free and dictate the game? And do you still think he can improve?
So here's the great unknown, Yeezy. Is he the way he is right now because he's adapted, or is he the way he is right now because he recognizes who CJ Carr is? That's a bit of a question that I have. I think it's a little bit of both.
Agreed.
To be honest with you. Has he progressed? Yeah, I think the process of picking a quarterback last year changed Marcus Freeman, I think. Because I'm very confident in saying that the intel that I got that Marcus Freeman was kind of leaning towards Kenny Minchie for a bit of camp is legit. I'm confident in that intel. And I'm not the only one that got it. A lot of Pete Sampson got it. Tim O'Malley got it. Like a lot of us got that same intel. And I think the fact that he went with CJ, the way CJ progressed and then the way CJ played, I think has allowed Marcus Freeman to say, I don't have to be so rigid in practice as a defensive coach. I have to trust when Gino Guidugli and Mike Denbrock say, hey, coach, I'm okay with those interceptions because we're working on something here. You know what I mean? Like we don't love the interceptions. We're not like, good job, CJ, but like, we're okay that he took that chance because now we can coach him up on something and we're trying to be more aggressive, and being more aggressive is going to ultimately result in more interceptions, all those type of things. I just think that process was good for him to say, boy, I almost made this mistake and look how it turned out, and I think that's something that helped benefit him. And the other part of it is just trusting Mike Denbrock and Gino Guidugli a little bit more when it comes to these type of things. So, yeah, I think that has improved him. Can he improve? Yeah, of course. Of course, there's still room for improvement till he wins a national championship, and there's room for improvement everywhere. But, yeah, I think there's areas for improvement. But I think he's come a long way in the last year.
I do as well. I think Riley Leonard and watching him do what he did in 2024 kind of opened the door to Marcus Freeman being more open to these things. And then the quarterback battle, to your point, Brian, I think kind of blew the hinges off of it. Being okay with certain things. Like, I mean, with Riley Leonard, you just had to live with him missing open receivers.
Yep.
I loved everything that he did. But there were games that were, I mean, how many times did we go back and watch the All-22? It's like this game, Jaden Greathouse could have had 7 for $130 and 2 touchdowns if he was targeted more. And then he ended that game with 1 reception for 6 yards, and it went for a first down. You had to live with those things because he would also give you the hurdling a 6'1" corner in the Sugar Bowl to extend a drive for a first down. You would live with that because he had like 15, 16 rushing touchdowns. So I think that kind of got Marcus Freeman open to the idea of, I kind of just have to let this dude go be a dude in his own way. Then the quarterback competition really forced his hand. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah. A couple names that popped up, Trev, that I like. Derek Mays is a good one. Casey Mack, a guy, if you could have given him 0.5, that's a really good one. Garrett Medford said Drew Tranquil. Drew Tranquil ran a 4.58. Like, he could run. The guy that I think that is very close to Drew Tranquil, that if you could give Tavon Coney 0.15 more speed, maybe he might have been a better player. But Drew was already a really good athlete.
Yeah.
I've shared this before. There was a very different level of athleticism between Drew Tranquil and Tavon Coney. And Trev, I think I shared this with you at the pro day this year, but they were doing back pedal drill. It's a back pedal turn, back pedal turn, back pedal turn. And the whole point is you're trying to see how tight a guy's hips are, because a guy with loose hips is going to kind of stay on that line. So you're actually starting on the sideline and you're going vertical on the line. And when you flip your hips, you want a guy to pretty much stay on that line. That tells me he's got loose hips. And Drew did it, and it boom, 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 just right on that line. You're like, dude, that's how a linebacker's supposed to look doing a back pedal. Then Tavon Coney did it, and he turned it into a zigzag drill. And it's not supposed to be a big zigzag drill, because Tavon had really tight hips and he was slow. But he was a heck of a college box linebacker, like a heck of a college box linebacker. If Tavon was the athlete that Drew Tranquil was, he'd have been unreal, assuming he could have kept his head on straight. But like, that's another one that I think you could look at and say, boy, if you gave that guy 0.15 faster, that's another good one. Would be that one.
Another one, and I don't know if there's another level he could have reached, but could you imagine if Xavier Watts didn't run a 4.56 and he ran a 4.41 with the mind that he had?
Oh my
and the
gosh,
instincts that he had.
But here's the question: would he have developed those if he was faster?
It's a good point.
Or would he have just relied on his athleticism and speed like some guys do? Would he have understood the need to always be in the right position? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
It's a good point.
It's gonna be cool. Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting.
From Just Your Ordinary Joe, will future generationally great position coaches be denied ever having an award being named after them since they're all taken, ergo the Joe Moore Award?
I mean, there's really only one, right? I mean, there's really only one award named after a coach that I can think of, and that's the Joe Moore Award. I actually wish they would do more. I actually think there is room for this, Joe. And it's good to see you, Joe, by the way, my guy, Joe. I wish they would come up with more unit awards in college football. Best D-line, best secondary, best receiving core. Like, I'm fine with the individual awards. I have no issue with individual awards. Just like individual offensive linemen win awards. There's the Remington Trophy, which goes to the best center. There's the Lombardi. Outland can go to an individual offensive lineman, defensive lineman. I just think there's merit to making a few more of these things that recognize teams and units. You know, like the Steve Spurrier Award goes to the best offense in college football, you know, and then the Larry Johnson Award goes to the best D-line in college football. The Mike Mickens Award goes to the best secondary in college football. You know, things like that. I think that I would wish there'd be more of that. To be honest with you, I do. I really do. I think that'd be awesome.
I'm with that.
I think fans would be all about that too, because now it's not just like a player winning an award. It's like LSU won that award, Notre Dame won that award, Ohio State, Miami won that award. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Agreed. From Riley Erdman, I think the G5 bids are unnecessary. Fill the 12 teams with teams that actually have a chance.
Agree 100%.
Yeah.
Agree 100%. Yeah, I don't know what else needs to be said. I don't think the G12 teams, I know legally they probably have to for whatever reasons, but I don't think that it benefits them at all. There's been very few G5 teams that would have ever been able to get in a 12-team playoff and be competitive. And a lot and most of them are named Boise State from back in the day.
Yep.
Like, that's it. Like, even UCF, those good UCF teams would have got smoked, just like they did when they went and played in bowl games.
And,
you know,
agreed completely. And you could argue that 2024 Boise State was one of those teams of the G5 that could compete, and they still lost by 2 touchdowns. They had a Heisman runner-up at running back.
And they played Oregon tough in the regular season.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd put that team on the same level as like the Kellen Moore teams, the Jared Zabronsky teams. But like, yeah, to your point, like those were still, that was one of the better ones. And they were way better than James Madison and Tulane this year and still got smoked by Penn State. To your point, Trev, I agree with you completely. Like UCF in 2017 beat Auburn, but that was an Auburn team that had lost 3 games that season, you know, already and had gotten blown out. And that was the best UCF team. They beat them by a field goal. Like, they wouldn't have played Auburn in the playoffs. You know, that they wouldn't have been ranked that high. So that's about the only other recent team that might have been able to be competitive is that team, that UCF team in 17, the Scott Frost team in 17. But like, I don't know if some of those other teams that were really good, like the Josh Heupel team the next year, they got beat by LSU. That team wouldn't have been competitive in the playoffs, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Let's get to a few more here, Trev. Here's a good one.
From Dirtbag Jake, a.k.a. Moneybag Jake, obviously with limited access, but who is one newcomer on offense and defense who has surprised you guys the most?
Offensively, I would say Sullivan Garvin. I had him as a 4-star, but like he's further along than I thought he would be playing center. He's really impressed me. He's even better than I thought he was going to be. He would be my number one pick on offense. My runner-up on offense would probably be Trev, you're going to laugh at this because he didn't look great in the first practice, but the last couple of practices, Devin Fitzgerald's a very different looking kid. Like he's a little ahead of where I thought he'd be right now. Those would be my two. I'm not at all shocked. I mean, I'm excited about the Bubba Frazier balling out, but Trev, you know this from the moment Notre Dame went after him. I'm not shocked at all that Bubba Frazier looks like he looks. I've been trying to tell people for a long time, not that you ever disagreed with me. I've been trying to tell people for a long time that Bubba Frazier's a very underrated baller. I think we both picked him as the most underrated player in that class when we did our recruiting class breakdowns. I'm pretty sure we both picked him as the most underrated player on offense. Like he's a baller. I'm not shocked that Bubba's doing this, especially with Jaden Greathouse having been out. I'm not shocked that he's there. I think I graded Bubba. I'm going to look it up now, but I thought I graded Bubba as a top 150 player coming out. Let me see here. Where do I have Bubba? Yeah, top 150 player with 4.5 star upside grade. I'm not shocked that Bubba's doing what he's doing, especially in the return game. Not shocked at all.
No,
and if you're not sure what I'm talking about, check out the intel piece that I put up on the board today. I had some notes on Bubba Frazier on that. Actually, I'm going to put a link to it in the chat right now, Trev. So people who maybe haven't seen it yet, but that are board members can go there. But here's the intel piece, and I'll put the recruiting intel piece on there too. So go ahead, Trev.
I get that completely. You and I were both, you obviously more so than I was, very, very high on Bubba Frazier coming in. And Devin Fitzgerald was my sleeper pick in the spring.
Yep.
Of like, if there is a player that you guys, and the only thing that I kind of based it on was he exploded his senior year, and genetics are a very real thing. That wasn't me saying he's going to be Larry Fitzgerald 2.0. We're not going to know that until he's older and seeing meaningful minutes. But, I was very high on Devin Fitzgerald as a sleeper coming into the spring. One that and this is going to be very unpopular because of the name and the school that he came to. I've been very happy with what I've seen from Mylan Graham. I think there was a lot of people that were just like, he's from Ohio State. He's obviously going to be good. And I was more of a little bit of the, yes, but he's also electing to leave a school that is known for developing wide receivers. Why? As a younger player, it's not like he's like a fifth-year senior with 1 year of eligibility left and who's like, well, I'm just not going to play over Jeremiah Smith, so it is what it is. So I was hesitant. I was excited, but it was a very cautious optimism around like, okay, dude, you're leaving for some reason. Quincy Porter, I could see. It's like, okay, they brought in Chris Henry, who's bigger than you are, and they still have Jeremiah Smith. What's the deal with Mylan Graham? And so I was very hesitant. I've been very pleased with what I've seen from him. So now I don't want to coin that as surprised, but I've been very pleased with what I've seen from him. That's for sure. And then up until his injury on defense, I'd go Nick Reddish. He surprised me.
He'd be one. Aiden Pouncey's been even better than I thought so far. Ebenezer Utade is a lot more further along than I thought he would be. I thought he was a guarantee redshirt as a freshman guy. That's going to be harder to do now. And that's a kid who I had as a top 100 recruit, but I just thought he was going to need a year, but he's been really good. Now, Rodney Dunham's every bit of the player we thought he was going to be. And I haven't had a chance to see a lot of Thomas Davis Jr. this spring. So they just do bag drills. So I haven't really paid a ton of attention to the linebackers, unfortunately. So I can't speak to him, but those would be my picks, Trev. Yeah. And Nick Reddish is a good one. Absolutely. All right. Let's get to a few more here before we get out of here, Trev. real quick answer on this one from Archer. Jeremiah Smith revealed that he was offered $10 million to hit the transfer portal this offseason. Do you think we will ever see real consequences for tampering? No, I don't.
Nope.
I don't think we'll ever see real consequences for tampering.
From Joseph Parr, from what you know, how does Aaron Henry coach defensive backs differently than Mike Mickens did?
I don't know that there's a lot of differences other than just style and different traits. Like if you haven't listened to today's interview, Aaron Henry went on this really long explanation about how he helps kids learn. That's very different than what Mike Mickens did. And he's leaning on his background as a teacher to kind of do those things. So I think it's stylistically, it's different. I think the foundational principles are very similar to what Mike Mickens believed in. So I don't know that I'd say philosophically there's any difference at all. I don't think that there is. I think stylistically it's very different because he's got to be himself and not Mike Mickens. And I think as a former educator, he's leaning on that a little bit. So I think that's the big thing, is just how he teaches, how he talks, how he, communicates is very different than the way that Mike Mickens was. But I think philosophically, the things they believe in, footwork, hand play, being smart, being in the right place, playing the ball, things like that, I think are very similar.
Yeah.
Very similar.
From BD loves he who shall not be named. Brian, I went back and watched the IB stream. Notre Dame got left out of the darkest day of being a Notre Dame fan for you, with everything that went on with the opt-out happening and the media outpour.
No, that
was the darkest day?
No, that was not the darkest day for me. The darkest day for me, Trev, I'm going to look up what the exact date was right now. But the darkest day for me as a Notre Dame football fan is still November 20th, 1993. And that's the day they lost to Boston College. That's still the one that stings the most for me. Yeah. After that, I'd probably say Notre Dame USC, just the way they lost in 05 still stings. Yeah, I just, the whole 2016 season was just a dark, depressing season. Like, it was just a miserable season. But yeah, I'd still go back to November 20th, 1993.
Yeah, the day they got left out of the playoffs is up there for me, but mine is still the Ohio State game in 23.
From 23?
Dude, that was so gut-wrenching. And during my fandom over the course of that time, I'd yet to see Notre Dame beat that level of an opponent. I watched them lose to the Alabamas. I watched them lose to the Georgias. And I know they beat Clemson in 2020, but it was with like 5 of their key starters out, including Trevor Lawrence with COVID, and it took them to double overtime to do it. And it was just a weird year. Like, I'd yet to watch them do that. And I was in person, and it was like, look, man, I think this is it. And for them to lose that way, that was rough. That was a very dark day.
Agree.
Another one from BD. Brian, do you think the Notre Dame and Miami saga at the end of the regular season was a conspiracy by the committee to gain interest in the final ranking and to create a storyline going into next season?
Yes on the first part, no on the second. I don't think their intention had anything to do with storylines in 2027 or 2026. I think it was all about creating interest in the ranking. I think they used Notre Dame. I think their intention was to screw Notre Dame over the entire time. I didn't believe that at the time. There were people saying at the time. I was not. Dan Patrick had made a note of this, that he was told by somebody that was connected to the committee that he thinks they're going to screw Notre Dame over. I think the entire thing was to create talk and to create interest. Where if Notre Dame was behind Miami and Alabama, there's no conversation. Notre Dame just needs Miami to lose. That's the only way they can get in. But by having Notre Dame ahead of them, now you create all this talk about, how can Notre Dame be ahead of them head-to-head. I think it was all done for ratings. I think they were going to screw over Notre Dame the entire time. And the only way they wouldn't screw them over is if Miami goes out and gets beat, then Notre Dame's in and we don't have to deal with it. But I think it was 100% TV ratings. Didn't believe it at the time, but looking back at it, there's no other explanation. None that makes any sense other than either A, they're all morons, and I don't even think that's enough of an explanation. I think it was all done for TV ratings.
Oh, yeah, especially for that. Ooh, almost got me cursing. Excuse me. Especially for that dumb.
PG.
Yep. Especially for that dumb reasoning of you can't compare head to head unless the teams are directly next to each other in the rankings. That's so dumb. It's like, what are you talking about? Like teams with an identical record that played head, but you can only evaluate them if they are 10 and 11, not if they're 10 and 12. Like that was the silliest thing. Yeah. It was all for TV ratings. It was to get the
100%.
Notre Dame fan base involved.
100 and to get other people pissed about Notre Dame. It was to me, it was the one thing they know, that if you get Notre Dame here and give them love, you piss everybody off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like Texas Tech fans are, guys, you're ranked ahead of Notre Dame. What does this have to do with you? You know, so like, well, nobody else cares about us. So we just want to jump into a conversation that doesn't have anything to freaking do with us.
Another one from BD loves whatever. Brian, does it irritate you when
Jay
Notre Dame
Melvin? Let's just call him Jay Melvin. That's who it is. It's Jay Melvin. We'll just go back.
Jay Melvin. Brian, does it irritate you when Notre Dame tries to play nice and rub elbows with On3 ESPN and the SEC? It's like countries inviting in people with cultures that vehemently despise them no matter what.
Nah, it doesn't bother me at all. Look, there's an old expression, right? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I have no problem with Notre Dame being that way. And yes, SEC vehemently despises Notre Dame, and ESPN vehemently despises Notre Dame. And I don't think all three despise Notre Dame. I just think that they're, just out to get clicks. But it's smart for Notre Dame to here's the thing, use them. Here's my issue with Notre Dame and their relationship with them is it's not that they buddy up with them. You should, but you don't use them enough. You need to start playing them the way they play you. And that's what I kind of liked about them saying no to the bowl game. I think a big part of saying no to the bowl game was we're not going to let ESPN use us for an entire month to talk about the snub, and our players got to answer that every freaking day. And you guys get to have, the two biggest snubs in all the playoffs playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. F that. I don't want to hear any of that. We're not going to use that. But yes, use them. It's kind of like the whole thing with Bussin' with the Boys. Like, whatever. I don't have a problem with it. I don't know that it moves the needle the way that some people do, but there's no harm in it. It's not that they do those things. They do those things and then feel for some reason by doing that, they can just completely ignore the Notre Dame media. That's my problem. Like, they intentionally do things to kind of screw us. And while doing this, so it's not it's not the fact that they have the media blitz on the East Coast. It's that you do that while getting rid of the local media day that you used to do. That's what bothers me. That you do all these things, you'll go on JD Pickles, show or whatever's, and you'll go on Bussin' with the Boys and all these other shows, but you won't come on to the biggest Notre Dame show. Ever. Now you had no problem doing that when you were the defensive coordinator and you were trying to build up your brand as a coach. Had no problem doing that. But now y'all won't have anything to do with us now. That bothers me. So it's not that they do that, it's that they do that and then don't do this. That's what bothers me. But it's smart to get your brand out there. It'd be silly if Notre Dame said, we'll never go on ESPN again. Well, that's dumb. You've just taken yourself off the biggest platform in sports. Now you're hurting yourself to hurt them, and that's dumb. It's one thing to skip a bowl game, but to declare this long public war, fight your war privately against ESPN. Build up other brands to compete against them in ways that you can. There's no reason to have that. Like, SEC swings a big sword in college sports. There's no reason not to have a good relationship with them. Plus, the Big Ten isn't your friend. So if you also then go pick a fight with the SEC, you're outnumbered 2-1. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, the SEC is using Notre Dame. Fine, we're going to use you too. That's smart. I think all that's smart. It's just you don't do it at the expense of basically saying we don't care about the Notre Dame media. That's kind of my issue. Speaking of Notre Dame media.
From Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker, would Loose Emoji have a place in the IB show? If yes, would he be on daily?
Of course he would. Actually, Lou and I talked about when he was ready to retire, just doing some stuff with Irish Breakdown. Lou was a mentor. Lou was a friend. Lou would have absolutely, I'd have loved to have Lou on the show. Would it have been daily? No, it wouldn't have been daily. Lou wouldn't have wanted to do a daily podcast. No. Like, Lou's a writer. He's a storyteller. He's a historian. That's what he would have been good at. But I would have loved to have had Lou on. And he absolutely would have been on the show. No question. I love doing shows with you. I love doing shows with Vince and Sean, and I liked doing shows with Ryan. But just doing shows with Lou when I first started doing a podcast was amazing, because every time we're talking and it's like I'm sitting across from a guy that I used to, like when I was a kid, would read his articles and couldn't wait to get my magazine, and couldn't wait to read him and Tim Priester and all those type of things. Like, that was just such a, oh my gosh. Like, and I've said this before, but Lou and Tim Priester both were so kind to me when I first started covering Notre Dame. Like, some people like viewed me as a threat and they didn't like my personality. I don't care, which is probably why they didn't like me. But like, Tim and Lou were so kind to me, so helpful, answering questions, giving me advice, welcoming me into the media. And those are the deans. Like, those are the godfathers of the Notre Dame media. Like, and guys, I grew up reading their magazine as a kid. Like, it was, and they were so kind to me when I took over. And you know, I still consider Tim a friend, and Lou was a great mentor and friend. That's the main reason I went to work for BGI, was because I wanted to work with Lou. And so, but just so doing those shows, it's almost like, it's Travis, kind of like how you explained when you first started doing shows with me about, like, you know, covering Notre Dame, and just not the awe of me, but like just the awe of, like, I'm talking Notre Dame. That's kind of how I felt when I was doing shows with Lou. I'm like, dude, I'm talking Notre Dame football with Lou Saboji. This is so great, you know? But he was such a wonderful, kind man. But I'll always have a special place in my heart for Tim and Lou, because of the fact that they were the avenue that I learned more about Notre Dame. That was it. There was no internet when I was a kid. That's how old I am. It was waiting to get my BGI magazine. And I'm hoping that IB can be that for people. And we might have some news coming up here soon about maybe stepping into that a little platform a little bit. We're still working through some kinks, but so doing shows with Lou was such an honor for me, and so much fun. And the regret I have is I wish that I was, I don't say, I mean, I still talk over people. That's just my personality, but I wish I had the experience of leading a show then that I have now. Because I think I would have let Lou talk more. I think I would have had a better idea of how to stringing like Lou into things and bringing things out of Lou and things like that. And ideas for formats, like doing a mailbag would have been so much fun with Lou. And that's the only regret, but one of the biggest honors of my professional career was being able to do shows with Lou Saboji. And since he was a friend, and I still remember sitting in my driveway, him and I talking about me leaving BGI, and just both of us with, you know, tears come down our eyes, is like, yeah, he would have been on the show. No question. And anytime he wanted to be on the show, he would have been on there. So those, you know, like I said, I always hold Tim and Lou in high regard. They're to be able to call them friends has just been one of the big, and they're not the only, like, Tim O'Malley's an awesome guy. You've met Tim, you've been around Tim, amazing guy. You know, last couple of years built up a really good relationship with John Bryce. Like, so there's some people on the beat that I have a lot of respect for, but with all due respect to Tim O'Malley and who's probably my closest friend on the beat right now, and John Bryce, who I, you know, talking with John last night today, but like, there's just something different about Lou and Tim. You know what I mean? Like, just the OGs. You know, I get along well with Pete Sampson. I mean, they're just the OGs, man. It's just different with those guys. And so to be able to share this space with them was just been a tremendous honor for me. But Lou was one of a kind. He was absolutely one of a kind. There's no question. No question. You know what, Trev? I actually think that's a great place to end. With all Beefeater and Archer, you guys had good questions, but I can't think of a better way to end the show than being able to talk about Lou. So,
well, that's awesome. That's
Thanks
awesome.
for
Well,
that.
folks.
Thanks for that, Josh Buffo.
Folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We will be back on Monday with the buy, sell, hold. So make sure you guys come correct like you always do with some awesome submissions. Have a fun and safe weekend. Enjoy your Saturday and Sunday off. Like I said, Brian and I will be back on Monday. On your way out of here, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends, family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So until Monday, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.